So it being on or about 6:30, we'll call this meeting to the Conservation.
Recording in progress.
I'll start over then. It being on or about 6:30, I'm going to start this meeting. Easton Conservation Commission, bring it to order. May 24th, 2021. Please note that this meeting, in accordance with emergency order from Governor Baker, remote board meetings were authorized during the emergency declaration, and this will be conducted over Zoom. Attendance will be remote, and remote attendance shall count as quorum. This meeting is being audio and video recorded. Please note that you can access the meeting through the URL top of the list or call in using the numbers. Meeting applicants will be allowed to take control of the screen for their presentations, or I can pull up any documents that are part of Permit Eyes. Please note that on April 6th, 2020, the Commission delegated signature authority to Andrea Langhauser, Environmental Planner, Assistant Planning Director, for all decisions issued during the duration of the emergency. Please also note that, as a reminder, to maintain efficiency during these remote meetings, so we're trying to limit the hearings to 15 minutes unless I authorize additional time. After 15 minutes, I will just determine whether or not all topics have been covered and whether to extend the hearing. Please asking all applicants, commissioners, and any public contributing comments to remain focused and concise in their presentations and discussions. Commissions are expected to have reviewed permit materials prior to the hearing to contribute to maintaining an efficient discussion. Additionally, after the applicant's presentation, the chair will request the agent to provide a brief summary of the staff report so that the commission is aware of the issues identified by the agent and to help focus the discussion. As a reminder, any materials a commissioner, applicant, or member of the public presents during the public hearing that is not already part of the permit records should be provided by email to the principal clerk and agent following the meeting so it can be retained as part of the permanent record. I'm just going to now ask the members of the commission to announce their name in a roll call to establish quorum and identify themselves to the public. So I'm up, Rory Caulfels.
Ben Carroll.
Mike Spadea.
So having 3 members present, that is a quorum. So we are going to proceed. I will also just note 2 other housekeeping issues. One is that at my discretion, it's somewhere around 90 minutes or 120 minutes. I may take a brief recess for 5 minutes. If it looks like the meeting is going to extend quite a little period beyond that, just to give us all 5 minutes to grab a glass of water or do whatever we need to do. The other thing is that, what is the other thing? I forgot. So I'm just going to turn off this live transcript because it's going to drive me nuts. The other thing is that the agenda, I'm going to take 2 out of order. We're going to do those first just so we can get them off the plate. They should be relatively quick. So I'm going to take the continued hearings from our last hearing first on the agenda. That's 365 Main Street and 181 Howard Street. I do want to just notify everyone that I am doing that. And so first up on the agenda is 365 Main Street. This is a request for determination of applicability for proposed patio extension, shed installation, and retaining wall repair. This was Mr. David White, which I think that Andrea had met with Mr. White after our last meeting. I don't know, it'd be better for you, Andrea, to explain what's going on. Did you want Mr. White to do his best?
I have spoken with Mr. White a couple times, and so I think he can do his best very successfully.
Okay.
But at the same time, yeah, and I'll be here for questions, David.
So, Mr. White, you can take yourself off mute and turn on your video. And
something happened with the video. It flipped as soon as you started playing with me.
We made you a panelist, David. So
Okay.
you can turn on, so here you are.
There you go. Very good.
Well, I guess I met with Andrea, thankfully, because she was a giant help. And we mapped out what we were planning on doing with the shed and the extension on the patio and the filling out front. I guess I don't actually know what you want from me.
I can share my screen if you'd like.
Sorry.
If we take, item number 1 on the site plan that you see in front of you is the small retaining wall adjacent to the wall. Now, David, I actually designed this, I actually put this in incorrectly. It's actually only going to be a section of wall that runs parallel to the driveway, holding back fill on the other side of it. It's not going to be a planter.
Okay.
It is going to be about 7.5 feet away from the driveway, and it's all flat there. So the reason I said I would share my screen is because I can show you pictures in the staff report. The retaining, down at the patio, the back patio, item number 2, there's a moon shape extension of the patio that's going to have a maximum depth of 5 feet. That's 75 feet away from the retaining, the intermittent stream at the base of the property. The little retaining wall in the front is 97 feet away from the retaining wall and is about 97 feet away from the stream and about 69 feet from the toe of the slope where the lawn starts getting wet. The shed, we've identified that as item number 3. It's still 20 by 10, and it's also 75 feet away from the intermittent stream. The area of fill behind the number 3 number is along that slope, and it's just to fill in a divot. So he'll bring the fill in from the street, and he'll use a small, John Deere tractor, thank you, to pat it down. But he'll be better than 80 feet away from the wetland at that point. Those are the 3 main components, and the photographs in the staff report might answer the questions that the commission had if the site plan doesn't.
So just one question: how far does the retaining wall here in this second picture? How far will it come out? There's a couple of stakes right there. You expect them to come out where?
Yeah, it's actually I put 2 stakes, one at 7 feet and one at 6.5. I'm kind of all about, it has to look perfect. So
right.
7 feet looked a little long, and 6.5 looked kind of perfect to match the steps. So no bigger than 7 feet, but I just put that in it to be a max length. It may be 6.5.
Okay, so we'll just probably condition it to be no more than 7 feet, so you have the flexibility of doing that.
Great.
And so this is on the left-hand side on this picture here. That's the location of the shed. You can see the little divot in this little area on this hill right here. That's the divot we're talking about, right?
Correct.
And this is the intermittent stream at the rear of the house. And over here is where the patio, he's looking to extend it out a maximum 5-foot radius there, just to help him, have a little more room to put a table on there. And this is that intermittent stream in the drainage off the side from the road on that side there. So as you can see, the property is fairly flat. So I'm not very concerned about erosion at this point. Any questions from anybody else on the commission? Andrea, we've covered all the points, right?
Yeah, thank you, Roy.
I'm good, Rory, nothing for me.
Yeah, I think plans are much improved from last time through.
Yeah, Andrea was a giant help. I gotta say that she really put it all together. Honestly, she was a huge help.
That's great.
Traffic person in my former life.
So I think that the only thing, so I think if we give this with a negative determination with some conditions, we will probably be okay on this, from my standpoint. Just two things to note here. One is that that we did receive butter notifications on this, correct, Andrea? And I think that's it from me. Any public comment from?
The only question I have was a question of whether I could mow on this last picture area there. I uploaded pictures from the 20th. Her picture was taken, I believe, April 22nd. And I uploaded some from May 20th and then from today to show like a full mature lawn on the right side. Excuse me. Basically that bottom picture. If you look, you'll see the dates.
Yep, just give me 1 sec.
I just want to continue to be able to mow that area. It's actually a metal plate that's laying in the ground for the street. And you can see that it's basically mature lawn with, dirt patches of what's left and it's all dried up.
So if you go to the very last picture, you can see the stone culvert, and at the end of April, and you can in the foreground, you can see it's kind of wet. If you look back up at the stone culvert, you'll see a stone concrete guardrail on the left side of that stone culvert. Look at you. Here you go. Those guardrails are about where the grass gets really soggy in high groundwater. And you can see the pool of water on the right side of the area that has flow. And so what Mr. White's asking is whether or not it's okay for him to mow an area that floods in high groundwater, or if you would like to use those concrete posts as likely wetland markers, and ask that he only mow once a year.
And again, did you see those pictures, Rory?
Yeah, I did see one. I'm just trying to get the other one up. So.
Yeah, there's two from today, and a few from 20th. Basically, just trying to point out the fact that how much it's dried up and basically what it's always looked like. I mean, April and May are rain months. And it does get wet there, obviously, but like I can drive my lawn tractor over it. It doesn't take to do anything now.
I'm going to share this in a second. So I'm going to show one of the pictures from today, and I think they're both very similar. So,
yeah, one is from the plate, look that same view, and the other is looking back toward the plate.
So this is you should be able to see that now. So this is from today, what it looks like today. Here's the challenge, and this was a little bit of what we covered last week, and then I'll get to public comment if there's any, is that this is a wetland. whether or not it dries up or not, it
Yeah.
still is a wetland. And that's, it, has a wetland function, and it is a wetland resource. And, the preference here would be, from my standpoint, and I'm willing to hear input from other commissioners, that, mowing be restricted to, once in the fall. And that probably is similar to the intermittent stream in the back of the property as well. And so, I mean, given that these are intermittent streams, and drainage, that while it does dry up, that they do have wetland functionality. So typically, we would, if you were coming to us without having an established lawn there, we would not, permit any disturbance there. We understand the cutting once in the fall to keep any sort of growth, undergrowth happening, small trees and whatnot. And that's why we cut one time in the fall. So that's the challenge here. Mike, Ben, any comments?
No, I would agree with that for sure. Right? Once a year is what we should be doing.
My
Well,
question is where is the line for where he would have to stop mowing?
So I think on this picture, Andrea is suggesting it's probably about 5 or 6 feet west of this where this wet portion normally is. Andrea is suggesting to use this outside marker here to sort of just extend down that as a line.
Got it.
And similarly in the back, I think probably taken 3 or 4 feet north of that intermittent stream, and I think we can switch to another thing so you could see what that is. But
Can you show the picture where it's a beautiful lawn? And I don't know if Ben and Michael know that I've lived in Easton my whole life. My knowledge, basically, I've been in love with this house since I turned 18 and could drive by it. And I ended up eventually being able to purchase it. And every time I drove by this house, I looked at it, and that lawn was mowed. It's been mowed for as long as I can remember. And I just continue to mow that area and maintain what's always been mowed for as long as 60 years of my life. I've been driving by this house, and every day I would look at it when I drove by. I just want to continue to mow this area. Speaking with Andrea last week, she said, didn't seem to have a real huge problem with it as long as she thought I should wait a couple more weeks for it to dry out a little more. But this is today, like a beautiful lawn, just a small bit of dirt bit. Something I take pride in doing, and it makes me very happy to see it looking well. And I know you guys want to do what's best. I just was hoping this could be a little something for me out of this. You know what I mean? That whole back area I haven't touched. Andrea wants me to stay 5 feet off of that area, and kind of a OCD guy. And what you see is a beautiful conservation area. I see as a scruffy mess. And I really hope I don't have to look at that every day when I walk out my door. From that plate forward, I mean, it's literally, that brown spot is 35 feet long. Doesn't attach to where the culvert comes out. The culvert doesn't have any water in it. It's groundwater, and then it goes away. And it's always been maintained that way. And looking at her report, it says that the project site is not within a habitat area, and it's not in a area of critical environmental concern. So in my mind, I would hope that would say there's no habitat for anything. It's not a critical area of concern. It shouldn't be a problem to allow me to just mow that portion of my lawn. It's a 10-foot wide strip.
So just as a clarification, those are defined terms. Those are specific high value areas related to, in town, the Hockomock Swamp, the Canoe River Aquifer and whatnot. So, it doesn't mean that the wetland itself doesn't have functions. In fact, the wetland bylaws and regulations specifically state that all wetlands have value. So, I just, it's a point of clarification. It's not a decision.
Yeah.
I'm simply making a point of clarification on what those statements mean in the in the thing. So is there any public comment for 365 Main Street? Just raise your hand or send me a note. Give you a moment there. Okay. So I think from my standpoint, I'm going to make a motion to issue a negative determination of applicability with conditions, noting that the retaining wall in the front of the house is not to extend more than 7 feet from the foundation, and that in the other recommendations is noted in the staff report, work should be done by hand or small garden tractor. Sweep the driveway at the end of each workday. Install an 8-inch straw wattle to define the patio work area to control any erosion. I'm going to make this condition is that there is to be no mowing of the either the easterly area or the southern area that gets wet in the spring until no sooner than June 1st of each year.
I appreciate that and absolutely do that.
So do I have a second?
Spady, a second.
Okay. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Then you're up.
Carol, I.
Spady, aye.
Okay, so that was for a negative determination with conditions.
So do you guys actually create a document and send it to me or email it to me or something about this, or yes, no?
Yes.
It'll be out within the next couple weeks.
All right, Andrea, thank you for everything. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
181 Howard Street. This is a notice of intent to construct an in-ground pool house, and patio, although I understand it's changed since then.
So as I understand this, because I've missed, wasn't a commissioner for some of the meetings this was before.
Oh, you know what?
I don't think I can vote on this, right?
We actually don't have a quorum on this.
Carol's coming. She said she'd be late.
Boy, come on, boy, come on.
Okay, so Eric, since Ben isn't eligible to vote, we've only got 2 members, so we don't have a quorum. Commissioner Lundin is supposed to arrive at some point here in the evening. I don't know if you either want us to continue the hearing to the next meeting, or you want to hang around until she arrives and then we can slip you in into the meeting.
Yeah, I can stick it out for a little bit.
Okay, so we're going to just put this hearing on hold for a moment until we get a quorum, and then we can bring it back up again.
All right, sounds good.
Sorry, Eric.
No problem. I appreciate you moving.
Yep. 382 Purchase Street. This is a notice of intent to extend a deck and install a landing and stairs. And I also understand the applicant also wants to take down some trees. Do we have the applicant here?
Mark Costanza.
Yep, Constantino.
Constantino.
Yeah.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Good, and you?
Good. So I don't know if you want to take control of the screen, or you want me to bring up your plans, or what would you like us to do?
Yeah, if you want to bring up the plans, that'd be great.
Yeah. So let me just, I will put this up.
And abutters were notified.
Thank you. There's a couple of windows here. Okay, so up on the screen, you guys can see that right now, right?
Yeah. Could you zoom in?
Yeah. So here is Purchase Street.
Yep.
The existing home. This is the existing deck and stairs, but the existing deck and stairs have been removed, or just the extension of the deck? Just the extension of the deck has been removed, right?
Yeah, so the decking is still there. The stairs have been removed.
Right.
We originally tried to keep it in the same footprint, but there was no good way of doing it. You'd end up with the stairs either outside the footprint or running out underneath the deck. So we basically proposed to put a landing and a new set of stairs on the back of the deck, extend the deck 7.5 feet out to the edge of the house, and then put a 42-inch by 42-inch landing on the corner, and then run the stairs down from there to the backyard on the back side of the deck.
Right. And so closest to the wetland is 46 feet. This probably isn't a lot more than what we've already got going on there.
It's basically the 3 footings that are needed are about 46, 47 feet away from, that number 4 marker, which is, I basically went off I didn't see a marker in the woods. I went to the closest tree that was in the wetlands.
Okay. Are you intending to hand dig these holes? Are we looking at machinery? What are we doing?
I assume they're going to be hand dug. It'd be my contractor would be the one digging it, but I don't think he would bring in machinery to do it. He would just dig it by hand.
Okay. So, so in addition to so I don't have any questions about the proposal for the decking and the stairs. Does anybody have any questions? So you had some proposal as well about taking down some dangerous trees in the property.
Yeah. So when Andrea came out and spoke to my wife about this project, we had spoken to her last year about removing some of the trees, and she suggested putting an addendum in. So it was basically, originally we were looking at 12 trees. We cut it back to 9, sorry. The 3 that were closest to the wetlands, we took out of the plan. Most of them are massive pine trees that we lose limbs all the time. They damaged our fence, our neighbor's fence. And then there's that on the right-hand side of this, that 46-inch maple. It's a beast that is, I think it's going hollow. There's bugs living in it. Limbs come down from that all the time. So we're looking to get rid of that. And then there's 2 other, there's another maple tree. Yep. And then an oak tree that we were looking to get down as well. And we had an arborist come down, and he also recommended removing them. So yeah, that's pretty much it, the plan for that.
So I think that from the arborist statement, the dangerousness of these 3, the 2 maples and the 1 oak is pretty well established by his letter, and I think that supports you taking those trees down. The underlying issue though is about the pines, and I know that they're close to the house. They're large. I'm sure you lose limbs off of those as well. But his statement about them wasn't quite as clear, other than the fact that they were dangerous to the house, right? I mean, they were close to the house and could cause damage if they came down.
Yeah.
He didn't indicate anything about the health of the trees being unhealthy or anything like that. And certainly, white pines in this part of the world do have a tendency to come down from time to time, especially in some of the windstorms we've been having in recent years. So you and I had a conversation out in the field, and you may have had a similar conversation with Andrea about whether there was a consideration on your part about trying to replace some of the trees
Yep.
with new materials so that we wouldn't lose all the functionality of the trees. Obviously, we're not going to have 60-foot trees growing there right away, which is
Yeah.
obviously what you don't want anyway. But have you given that some consideration?
Yeah, absolutely. My wife and I actually looked at some, we searched native trees to the area, and we found a couple that we thought would look good in the yard, that we wouldn't mind planting if it came to that.
Right.
The only question I had with that was if we take the trees down, how long would it be? Would it have to be like an immediate thing? We'd have to like plant new trees right away? And also, do we have to plant them in the same location that the old trees were at? Like, could we, specify, where we wanted to plant new trees? Or would they have to go in the same locations?
So certainly from my standpoint, Andrea, you can talk to Andrea more about what the best time of year to plant a tree is.
Okay.
I would want you to plant the tree when you're going to give it the most success to thrive. I mean, that's what I'd like to see. You should also choose where to plant them in the location that's going to be most likely for the tree to thrive. I have no, I wouldn't want you to plant them in the same spot because then you're going in the root systems and all that other stuff. I think you should probably find a location that's amenable to you and your wife and your family.
Okay.
And Andrea, you've got something to say? No? But you're raising your finger. No?
I'll jump in if you want.
Go ahead.
A quick question: are you grinding the stumps at all? Or
I planned on it.
You did plan on. So I mean, really, that probably would be the worst place to plant a tree, just because that's a ton of nutrients if they're grinding it.
Yeah.
Maybe at least one of them. They'll give it a fighting chance.
Okay.
So, like I said, from my standpoint, you'll be held responsible for those trees, being alive 3 years from now. I mean, that's basically how we'll sort of condition it.
Okay.
So, how many trees were we thinking about, Mark?
Taking down or planting?
Planting. I think we got 9 coming down.
When I talked to Andrea, I thought we originally were thinking of replacing the hardwood trees. So originally that was 6. Now it's down to 3. But I mean, I don't really know. I mean,
so I'd probably be comfortable. I'd probably be comfortable. I'd be okay with doing 5. I don't know what anybody else thinks. I mean, it's a good sort of middle of the road. I don't want to dominate your yard with trees. So we're sort of trying to avoid that for you. And also, I think that giving the trees enough space to grow is probably a good idea as well. So from my standpoint, Andrea, anything else we should be considering here, Andrea?
No, that wasn't me raising my hand. I think
No.
that the report speaks for itself. So you have 3 trees being removed within the inner 50-foot buffer zone. And you're asking for 5 trees planted in the fall, usually is the best time. I'm sure he's asking if it's the fall of 2021. And other than that, it's, keep them alive, just a usual, in this case, since it's only 5, it probably should be replaced in kind if they were to fail within 3 years.
Okay. Any other comments from the commission before I go to public comment?
Real quick, Mark, do you know what species or what you're looking for those 5 trees for replacement?
So we looked at an American sycamore was one of them, and then there was a type of elm tree that we were looking at. I don't remember top of my head which one it was.
No, that's cool. I was just curious where you're headed. So that's awesome.
Okay.
I have no further comment.
Any public comment for 382 Purchase Street? raise your hand or type me a quick note. Okay, so seeing none, I assume we want to close, Mark, and so I am going to make a motion to close and issue a notice of intent for 382 Purchase Street for the construction of a deck extension and accompanying stairway, along with removal of 9 trees as designated on the plan submitted. Noting that the applicant will replace the 9 trees with 5 native trees of his choosing to be planted subsequent to the removal of the existing trees in the fall, and they must have a success rate of any sorry, trying to think on the go here. Any failure of any of the trees, the newly planted trees, would have to be replaced in kind at a period of 3 years.
Give me a second.
Just 2 other things here, just make an amendment. So the limit of work should be defined as the existing chain link fence with an 8-inch straw wattle installed for the tree work, and sustainable lawn guidance should be followed. Perpetual conditions as standard, no dumping in the wetlands, which is a carryover from a previous certificate of compliance. I need a second on my amendment. Okay.
You got it.
Okay. And so roll call vote on the motion with the amendment. Caulfield's aye.
Carol, I.
Spady, aye.
Okay, Mark. You're all set.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Next up is 439R Purchase Street. This is Meadowview Commons. I believe that we have Brad. Who do we have? Brad Holmes representing the applicant. This is a notice of intent for proposed wetland restoration, wetland creation, and buffer zone enhancement. I do want to note here that this is essentially us revisiting a permit that expired through an administrative oversight on the part of the applicant. This is a large project over on Purchase Street that includes a large home development area. It does have a state superseding order that was already in place. I am fully in favor of us continuing with what the previous commission had already approved. I'm not here to have Brad have to jump through hoops to a new commission. There's not anybody on this commission that was on the original one, but in the spirit of a prior approval that was, and the applicant was diligently pursuing his whole proposal. I have no problem sort of going forward with what was already approved by a prior commission, given the conditions. So I do want to give that sort of as an overarching thing. We obviously, as the current commission, can do what we want, but just in the spirit of honoring a prior commission's commitment and approval, I just want to give that sort of overarching opinion. So, Brad.
Thank you very much. Brad Holmes with ECR, assisting Meadowview Commons with this notice of intent. Mark Barone is having difficulties trying to log in. He's stuck in the planning board meeting. He hasn't been able to make it to conservation, so I'll do my best. What we proposed is a continuation of a project that had an order of conditions. The work it didn't get initiated as far as what's proposed in this wetland mitigation and restoration and buffer enhancement. As Roy stated, the order of conditions expired, so we're here to re-permit that So we have a legitimate file number moving forward for working in your jurisdiction. The project basically has three aspects. One is wetland creation, creating new wetlands, removing upland and creating new wetland areas. One is wetland restoration, restoring an area of wetlands that was degraded. And the third aspect is buffer zone enhancement, taking an area of buffer zone and improving it with native plantings. The site plans that were approved as part of the project before were very well done. They had specifics on each location with planting schemes and a step-by-step methodology. After reviewing the proposals, I didn't feel it necessary to make any changes to them because they were so well done. The erosion controls are in place, and the next step is to get out and start this work and get these areas underway. I did get a chance to walk with Andrea and Mark Perone about a month or so ago. We did review the areas and walked and talked. And I think the next step is hopefully to get a supportive order of conditions, and then we can get started. And ECR will be involved throughout the process to assist the excavation and the laborers to ensure that the plan is followed as proposed. So I won't go on any further, and I'll leave it at that.
So you can see on the screen here, this development here is at the intersection of Turnpike and Washington Street. And you can see here that what Brad has described, wetland creation, wetland restoration, some wetland creation over here, buffer zone enhancement. Further pages on this document give you a detailed planting plan for each area, identifying all these species that are meant to be planted in each area, and detail in each specific area as well. I think there's even some details here about bird boxes. I think that from my standpoint, having reviewed the record, previous order, I have no questions. I don't think. Anybody on the commission have any questions?
I have none.
I'd like to just
Also-
identify a couple key points from the original order. We are in the Hockomock Swamp ACEC, and this is mapped habitat of the natural heritage. There is a turtle protection plan, which has been addressed through this process and and will continue. The only thing that's unique about, instead of just saying, let's have all the order conditions, original order conditions continue on, is one about permanent markers, whether or not there should be a fence line, or as was suggested by Brad, bird boxes. We're gonna have to do bird boxes anyways, put them on the limit of work with a very clear sign. If you wouldn't mind going back to the location of the construction, it is, one more, two more? Yep, one more. Up there. It is it's a tight lot with wetland resource areas being created within 15-20 feet of people's houses. And kids are going to play in this area because it's going to be the wide open spaces. So some lots are putting in fences, and that's great. Because that can't get better than a fence for not getting into the wetland. But it was suggested that fence lines or bird houses with very clear, bigger markers than we usually use. I just wanted to bring that to your attention, along with the other conditions are listed there, are rather straightforward. They're listed in item number 7 and number 8. parcel D has a retention basin, and then it's all native vegetation behind it, but here on 18 and lot 16 and 17, you're right in their personal space.
Um, I'm okay with using the bird boxes with a larger than normal signage. Do we think 4x4 is enough, or you want to go bigger than that?
You had a picture, Brad. They were standing about 6 feet. They look like they were standing about 6 feet.
Well, I did see that somewhere in the application.
Yeah.
That you say that.
Brad, can you describe? what it looks like?
Yes, it's usually a cedar post with the wooden bird box, and then the plaque on the back of the bird box facing the up gradient side. So I would say they'd be about 6 feet high, and there would be a normal plaque, put a 2.5, 3 inch plaque, but we'd be open to whatever you suggest.
Yeah, no, I think 3 inches is fine. I mean, you don't want it to overstate the bird boxes, destroy
Right.
the aesthetic beauty of that. So, any other questions from the commission? Any public comment for 439R Purchase Street? Raise your hand or send me a quick note. Okay, so seeing none, make a motion to close the hearing. I assume you want to close, Brad, even without Mark
Yes.
here. You can tell him you took care of it for him.
That would be great.
Make a motion to close and issue a permit for work in order of conditions for 439R Purchase Street. Notice of intent for proposed wetland restoration, wetland creation, and buffer zone enhancement. Noting the conditions in the staff report under number 7 and 8. Additionally, the fencing, permanent marker should be located along the fencing where installed, as well as bird boxes where fencing is not installed, using 3x3 plaques. Did I miss something, Andrea?
There's a phone that has his hand raised, so I allowed him to talk. I don't know if you want to second the motion first. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
So I didn't hear a second, so we're okay. So the phone caller, if you want to identify yourself and make any comment.
Yes, I'm sorry. This is Mark Perrin. I finally was able to get in. For some reason, I was getting into the planning board meeting, so I was able to get the gist of what the commission and my representative said. So I just wanted to make sure you knew I was part of the conversation, or at least part of the meeting right now.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so so I have a motion on the floor. I need a second.
80 second.
80 a second. So roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Carol, I.
80 aye.
There we go. Mark.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up is 24 Lantern Lane. This is a request for termination of applicability for a septic upgrade and retaining wall construction.
I don't recognize the name of the proponent. So if anybody could raise their hand, otherwise you're going to get me.
Ali, A-L-I.
Thank you very much. I'm making you a panelist. This was a request for determination Apologize for it not being at the beginning of the meeting as they normally are. And the proof of abutter notification has been submitted.
So can I just, for the record, did we have the butter notifications on for 39R?
Yes,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you.
Thank you. I just wanted for the record to have that noted.
And I'm bringing Carol up to a panelist stage. So Carol is present at 7:30.
Thank you. Okay, so 24 Lantern Lane, Mr. Ali, if you want to
Yes.
identify yourself and
Hi, my name is Ali Kiat. I'm the owner.
I see. Do you have your representative here? Or you here by
He's,
yourself?
he's supposed to be connected. He told me he was the engineer who did the plans. I don't know what happened. He's not. I can't see him.
Okay. And his name is,
Tom Rue.
yeah, Tom Rue is not in the attendees unless.
Yeah, I talked.
His friend's name.
So sorry, I talked to him earlier, and he said he was going to be connected, but I don't know what happened.
Okay, we can we'll just proceed without him, I guess.
Thank you.
So let me talk for you, Mr. Ali, and you can interrupt whenever I say anything incorrect.
No, please go ahead. Thank you.
So let's. Do you want to share the site plan, Curry? Very cool. He's got me trained. So the color on this is a little awkward. Lantern Lane is this property. Lantern Lane is a circular drive. It's at the back of Lantern Lane with and it butts up against a railroad right of way. There's a little bit of a stream inside adjacent to the toe of that slope with a bordering vegetated wetland running along the backyard, and the side yard where the top of the plan is a drainage easement. The septic system needs to be replaced, and the old system is going to be left in place. The closest he comes for his limit of work is more than 50 feet, and he has not identified an erosion control, but I think because it's so level, he could put an 8-inch straw wattle staked in place at the 50-foot buffer zone to act as a limit of work. His concrete retaining wall will be about 65 feet away. And again, relatively flat area. So I think he's found a location that's as far from the wetland as can be. So he met the simplified septic system guidelines, except for the fact that he used an RDA instead of a notice of intent. So I would recommend a negative determination with a straw wattle for limit of work.
So he's proposing a temporary silk sock here. It's in yellow.
Now, where's that?
It's this line here.
All the way over there. Okay, he's right. We're on the same page then.
Yep. Okay.
Was there a request for the construction of a retaining wall with this application as well, or is that part of the septic design?
It's to hold the septic in place.
Got it.
Is there details on? Do we know how high that retaining wall is?
A couple feet.
Okay.
You can tell on the spot grades. It's just so hard to read the plan.
I know. I really had a hard time. Actually, I did better when I printed it out black and white.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. Thank you, Maria, for explaining.
It's not your fault.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other grading? They're just going to do the retaining wall, no grading?
Yeah, it's really straight. It's really exactly.
Okay. Okay. Any questions from any of the commissioners?
None from me.
Mike, Carol?
Also,
Any public comment for 24 Lantern Lane? Okay, so seeing none, I'm gonna make a motion to close the hearing and issue a negative determination for 24 Lantern Lane. I think that I don't have any other condition, so.
So I am good.
Hang
This
on
is
just
my-
1 second, we have to vote, I need a second on my motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. My
Okay.
first time. I have no idea how it goes. Sorry.
Okay.
Spady a second.
Okay, roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Blondine, aye.
Carol, I.
Spady, aye. You
Okay,
gotta swap.
yes, the applicant is all set now, so,
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
yep. no
Have a
problem.
good night. Have a good night. Thank you. Bye.
Then next time we vote, we usually vote in alphabetical order by our last name, so you get to go after Rory next time.
Thank you.
I'll have to
Okay,
remember.
next up is 418 Depot Street. This is a notice of intent for driveway and utility upgrades for a single-family home.
Do you want to bring 181 up?
Oh, yeah, sorry, hang on a second, you're right, I did say I would bring up 181, so let's hop back to 181 Howard Street, because that'll give us, now that Carol's here, we've got a quorum. So bring up Eric Diaz.
Good evening.
Welcome back, Eric.
I am back.
So 181 Howard Street, this is a notice of intent to construct an in-ground pool house and patio. This is our multiple, we've had multiple hearings on this. Commissioner Carroll is not eligible to vote on this, so we will be voting just between myself, Commissioner Lundin, and Commissioner Spadia.
Excellent. For the record, Eric Dias, registered professional engineer with Strong Point Engineering, here tonight representing Gary Ledoux for the notice of intent at 181 Howard Street. Mr. Chairman, as you said, I believe it's actually our 4th public hearing on this matter. The last time we were before you was March 22nd, I believe. If it's okay, I'd like to share my screen just to kind of refresh memory. Can everybody see the screen?
Yep.
So the last time we were here, this is the plan that we were proposing. We had revised the paver patio area. We had revised the pool area. We had pulled things as far away as we practically felt we could from the wetland boundary on the western side, and we had proposed some mitigation in the front yard here. The commission was not satisfied, so we kind of went back to the drawing board and made some revisions, and we've come back with a very different product, and that plan is what you see in front of you now. I did provide a letter to go with this, so I will just breeze through the letter quickly, point by point. The proposed pool and patio areas have been withdrawn without prejudice. So those are out of the proposal, which was the bulk of the proposal. As a result of that withdrawal, the mitigation area that was proposed in the front lawn over here is now gone. That was proposed to offset the creation of impervious surfaces, when now we're not proposing any impervious surfaces, so that's gone. There were dewatering requirements that were associated, and there was a requirement to cap and bury this well. Those are no longer necessary, so those have been removed from the plan. The one thing that we are asking to stay from the original plan is this fence. If you look coming from the western side of the house, around the tree line, getting very close to the boundary of the BBW, and then wrapping around the backyard back to the eastern side of the house, we are proposing a stockade fence there. We have proposed to leave it elevated 6 inches off the ground surface to allow for some small wildlife passage under the fence. And we are proposing still the conservation markers on the posts inside the fence. I believe we have them as every 3rd post. We're going to put some conservation markers there. We had previously proposed an invasive species management protocol that remains in place. Requirements to adhere to the Commission Sustainable Lawn Guidance remains in place. There was always some minor revisions to grading through this area where the existing play structure is. That remains in place. And then the only new thing that we're proposing is there's an area that we have dashed here for a play structure for the children. We provided a photo of it that's in the package that we submitted. There's no footings, there's no foundation or anything associated with it. It's kind of like a big set of Lincoln logs that the young kids can play on. So there's no ground disturbance associated with that either. So we pulled way back. We did still provide for temporary stockpile and staging areas outside of the 50-foot buffer zone. And we hope that this is a proposal that the commission can tolerate a little bit better than what we had originally proposed.
I'm just trying to find a picture of this this structure. I didn't see it. But that
I
was,
can pull it up.
Okay.
Give me just a quick second. So if we go, can everybody see that?
oh yeah.
Now they have mulch under it. We're not proposing the mulch underneath. It'll be a lawn area underneath.
Okay. So what would you, the change in grade that's going to happen there, is that like a foot or less, or what are we talking about?
Less than a foot. I'll go back to that plan real quickly. So what you can see, this dashed line is the 97 contour that comes through here right now.
Yeah.
With existing play structure sits. The clients actually sent me photos of this being kind of underwater after a real heavy storm event. So we're just proposing to take that 97 and wrap it around this side of the play structure. So we're going to fill in less than a foot in this area. And that's something that's always been on the plan. That's not a new proposal.
You're proposing erosion controls?
We are. The erosion controls, if you follow my, you know what, I can even draw on this. We are proposing the erosion controls to start right here. They're going to wrap right around this side, wherever that contour is, and they're going to end just past that contour right there.
Okay.
That way, for any length of time that area is unstable, there'll be something there to catch anything that was to run off.
Very good. Any questions from the commission? I have no questions. Andrea?
No, the project has changed significantly. I just, for future reference, you might want to include the pool, lack of pool in your decision. It was withdrawn without prejudice. That's a significant statement. It means that it can come back. Penn can probably best speak to this, but it means it can come back at another time.
Okay. Any other comments from the commission before I go public? Looks like we're okay on that. So any public comment for 181 Howard Street? Okay, so I assume you want to close, Eric?
Yes, please.
Okay, so make a motion to close and issue a permit for work for 181 Howard Street, noting that the work being approved is the fence, the slight grading changes, and installation of a play structure. The pool and patio have been withdrawn without prejudice from the application. Let me just see if I got any other comments here that I need to cover.
Paragraph 12.
Yeah, I know. I just scroll back up to the top here. Also noting conditions in paragraph 12, permanent markers with wetland medallions. The applicant's proposing every third fence post. That's okay with me. That's 24 feet. So silt sock, shall be, installed as detailed on the plan. Fence to be located no closer than 1 foot from the existing naturalized area, and panels raised 6 inches from the finished grade. Sustainable lawn practices. As a perpetual condition, the applicant will shall implement all recommendations on the invasive species management plan from ECR to control and monitor glossy buckthorn, and no dumping in the wetlands is identified as a perpetual condition.
Give me a second.
Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye. Carol? Ben, you're up next.
I was under the impression I could.
Oh yeah,
not.
you can't vote. So Ben isn't voting. Carol, you're up.
Okay, Lundin, aye.
80 on.
Ben, keeping me on my toes. Okay, Eric, we're all set now.
All right, thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
I appreciate your patience for waiting for a quorum. So
No problem. Thanks for calling me early.
yep, thanks.
Good night.
Good night. So now we're going to go to 418 Depot Street. This is a notice of intent for driveway and utility upgrades for a single-family home. I believe Frank Ryblin is the representative. Frank, you there?
Yes, I am. Good evening, commissioners.
Good evening. How are you?
Good, pretty good.
Okay, so what do you have for us tonight, Frank?
Okay, 418 Depot Street is a conventional lot. It is a portion of a development that was created a little over a year ago. Dr. Azacker owned the property. It contains a little over 4 acres of land. We had the wetlands delineated, and this commission approved the wetlands by the ORAD process some time ago. Since then, we have divided the property into 3 lots. 2 of the lots are conventional lots, one of which contains the existing dwelling in the rear. 1 lot is an estate lot. All 3 lots are to be serviced by the existing gravel driveway, which has been in existence and used for decades. All proposed home construction is outside of the buffer zone. However, portions of the existing gravel drive do lie between the 50-foot and 100-foot wetland buffer. We would like to be able to install utilities in the way of water and gas services in the location of the existing driveway, as well as regrade the driveway upon completion of construction. Just maintenance regrading, basically. It's nothing different than what's already there, we just maintain it. And that's the sum of this proposal. I understand the agent has looked at it, and I realize the agent had a couple of comments, one of which is the proposal for using hay bales for siltation control. We would certainly have no opposition to accepting an order of conditions which would specify the straw wattles or mulch wattles be used for siltation control if that's preferable to the commission. Also, we have no objection to placing the permanent wetland markers. I would suggest, because of the driveway configuration, that we place the markers at 25-foot intervals along the down gradient side of the existing 25-foot easement, which is very close to the edge of the travelway.
There was so there was a comment from maybe Andrea. Maybe you could sort of give. There was a comment from Andrea about the about drainage on the driveway not being addressed. So you want to speak to that, Andrea? I think you covered the other.
Right. The having a gravel drive, in this case, it's truly the colloquial term would be a dirt road. It has no sub base. It pots up regularly, and this common drive will be used for 3 lots and all the construction equipment associated with it. So, just as a comment, This is in the ACEC. It is going to get a lot of traffic, and it will become an impervious, it already is an impervious surface from being compressed down. So I was suggesting that you would normally ask to have all drainage be directed away from the wetland area. I think the best way to do that tends to be by paving it, because then you can know that the flow is going to go in a certain direction. You know, but I'm assuming that by Frank ignoring that comment, he has an opinion on it. So before he has a chance to say anything, I also want to acknowledge that there's a street addressing policy in the town that was adopted in 2019. There are 3 lots that have the same street address. Before, he should not have actually filed in our system without changing the address for each of the 3 lots. And I am telling you, Frank, I'm going to put a hold on the application if the building permit hasn't addressed that issue, because it's a permitting nightmare for us to keep track of 3 lots with the same lot number. So those are my 2 comments that didn't get addressed. And the DEP file number hasn't been issued, but we do have proof of abutters. Unless you got the file number, Frank, I haven't seen it.
Okay, on several of those comments. First of all, regarding the street number, that's assigned by the assessors. I really have no control over that, but we will stay with that and try to get them to assign the number as quickly as we possibly can. That's just not something that I personally can do.
Have you already given them the recorded copy of the plan?
They have the information, yes.
Okay.
In fact, on one of the town GIS maps that I saw, it actually showed the lots on it as well. So the assessors do have knowledge of it.
Okay.
Regarding the DEP phone number, I was in communication today with DEP. They were attempting to get through their paperwork and get a file number out this afternoon. Apparently, they were unsuccessful at that. So, to my knowledge, that file number has not been issued at this time. Regarding the drainage, it was my position that the driveway is an existing gravel drive that has been in operation, in existence in this location, literally for decades. We're really not planning on, or our proposal wasn't to do anything but to continue its use. And the only maintenance was to smooth it out, just normal maintenance. However, since you have brought it up regarding the drainage, and I have spoken with my client, we are not adverse to go ahead and improving it with some pavement. And at that time, since we would be paving it, we'd be more than happy to do some drainage adjustments by the form of a crushed stone trench, run a crushed stone trench alongside the driveway, a 2-foot wide, 2-foot deep stone interceptor that would catch any runoff. I believe that would be an improvement for the environment for what's there now. You would not have the annual erosion of the water coming off the dirt drive that would be heading towards the wetlands. You'd be cleaning that up as well as providing the interceptor. So we will certainly be willing to accept that as a condition.
That's on the western side of the driveway, or is?
Yeah, it would be my suggestion to put it on the western side, the down gradient side. Yes.
Okay. I think that sort of addresses 50323 as well. So, I think that addresses that particular issue. Any other comments from the commission? Carol?
I would like to see a maintenance plan for that drainage area.
I will have them included on the. We're going to continue this hearing, so I'm sure that Frank can put in a maintenance plan. that he's done before, so.
Right, thank you.
That would not be a problem at all.
Anything else? Any public comment on 418 Depot Street? Raise your hand or give me a note. Okay, so seeing none, we're going to continue tonight simply because, mainly because we don't have a DEP number, but also because I think there's some alterations to the plan that we need to get onto it. So, Frank, I think that the three things we need are some plans for paving the driveway and adjusting the drainage to the upgrading its side into a 2-foot wide, 2-foot deep stone interceptor trench, including a maintenance plan for that trench, and location of permanent markers every 25 feet, right?
Certainly.
Did I miss anything else? I think that was it. So I think that's it. So I think if you get that to us next meeting, I'll put you near the top, Frank, and we'll get you in and out of here next time. Okay. Also, well, Andrea, does he have to address this address issue before he does this?
I didn't realize that it was in the assessor's office. I'll send them a note.
Okay, good enough. Okay, Frank, we're all set. Motion to continue. I assume you can get that stuff turned around to us quickly, right, Frank?
Certainly, you're really not asking for a lot of revisions on that. That can be taken care of right away.
Thank you. So I make a motion to continue 418 Depot Street to our next meeting on June 7th.
Maybe a second.
Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Lundy, Oh, Ben, are you sworn in? Like, you didn't vote on the last one?
I am sworn. I didn't vote on the last one because I wasn't there for the I think it was 3 hearings prior.
Sorry. Go right ahead, please.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
Carol, aye.
Lundy, aye.
Katie, aye.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Okay, so next up is 215 Washington Street. This is a abbreviated notice of resource area delineation, and the applicant and his representative should be here.
I don't know, Frank, I did bring Kevin O'Dwyer up as a panelist, and I understand the plan is drawn by Frank, if he wants to speak to it.
Okay.
And we did get proof of abutter notification.
And we have a DEP number, so I'm just waiting for the plan to come up with. Okay. Who wants to address the application?
I'm happy to. This is Kevin O'Dwyer from Langwater Farm.
Hi, Kevin.
How are you?
Good.
So we're just submitting here to approve the wetland line that runs along the south and west of our set on the barn.
Are you having trouble getting the plan, Roy?
No, it's up on my screen. You can't see it?
No, I got Summer Street.
Okay, hang on. Something happened.
He's really very good at this stuff. He's taken all control from me. It's wonderful.
How's that?
Better.
Okay. So, so it's this wetland line here with this intermittent stream behind it.
Correct.
It wraps around to the south part of the property where there's an existing cart path.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you got, Kevin?
That's
Oh,
it.
well, yeah, well, that sounds about right there, Rory. We've got the wetland line there, and then there's the stream, behind it, about 100 feet or so. And, it all runs behind our barn there. And in front of the barn, or to the east of the barn, is where we're planning to build a new farm stand. And so we'll be doing some site work in that area, and then just a little bit to the southeast of the barn, we'll be putting in the new road to access the field so that the tractors and the equipment can be separated from where the public will be enjoying some green space in the picnic lawn. So not all of this is shown on this plan. This is just an existing plan showing the wetlands line and that little riverway.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Can you annotate the plan? Can you see the plan? Can you put a draft, can you draft a line where that new roadway might be located?
Sure, it would be.
I don't know if, yeah, Kevin, do you know how to annotate? Go ahead, Kevin, you can.
I don't, I'm just on my phone here.
Okay, so he's not gonna be able to tell us.
Okay, so the reason I asked Kevin is because I did go out and double check the line. It was flagged by Ken Thompson, and while he recognized the very prominent intermittent stream, which is running north-south along the site plan, he missed what looked like a very clear flow pattern coming from lots of flags 26, 27, and then extending down toward the cart path. So there probably a while back, Phil had been pushed into this area, and now the wetland is right at the toe of the bank, and there's looks like seepage coming out of the flow and coming down where the exactly right through it. Maybe following Frank. Frank might even have these contours in here. You see the contour.
A little bit to the west of that
Yeah.
blue line, those contours.
So this right through here.
Yep.
That looks like where the stream is. The flags end here, but you can see with the contours that the stream continues as a ditch along the cart path. So there's wetland on either side of this cart path, but there's no hydraulic connection observed. Whereas down at the intermittent stream, there's a stone head wall and a bit of a pipe underneath it. And there's a clear stream, very clear stream on the south side. So this line is very much a portion of the site. And so the reason I asked, but I concur with the lines as long as we acknowledge very clearly it's a portion. And it doesn't include the intermittent stream that I annotated. The reason I asked Kevin about where the road off of the barn area might be is whether or not you think it might go into that, where it might cross the wetland or the streams.
Okay, do you see just a little bit northeast of that where those contour lines are very densely right, exactly right there at the foot of your cursor there. Sort of a berm there. The new road would travel just to the west of those contour lines, heading from north to south to link up with that existing cart path.
Right there. Okay.
Yep. So just to the west of that, and then heading south, southeast to come to towards the cart path, and closer to the fields off of 138.
Okay. Do you see it, you see Rory's cursor? Does it
Yes.
hit that gold line? Is that where it's connecting in?
It's, yeah, it would probably connect right around there, yep. Maybe a little bit to the east of where the cursor is now.
Okay. I bring that to your attention, commissioners, because you might want to give guidance as to whether or not you'll want a notice of intent or just an RDA for any new, for if there's going to be any grading there. That's just pre-application review. I have no problem. I have nothing else to say about the wetland line, which is what he came for.
Right, and I think certainly what the applicant's coming to us for is to know where the wetland line is so that he can design his project in a manner that's going to be consistent with what we would want to approve. So I think that giving him that kind of feedback, I'm not, you know, I'm not one way or the other on this. I mean, if he came to me with an RDA on this agricultural use, I'd probably be okay with it. But, you know, I'm open to hearing what other people might have to say about it.
I just have a question on the car path. So would you be clearing a portion of this wooded area for the car path?
Yes, we would. Yeah, for the new cart path that's going to run north to south, a little bit would be cleared. Small, mostly.
Yeah.
I don't think any trees would have to come down.
Carol or Mike?
I'm also, I'm good.
I'm good also.
So, so I'm the only one who had an opinion on whether RDA or NOI. So, is that the commission's recommendation to the applicant, or should he be safe and come to us with an NOI? I don't want the commission. I don't want him to come to us with an RDA if we're going to tell him yes, it's a positive RDA, and then you go file.
If he can stay outside the 50-foot no disturb zone and he's not taking down any trees, I imagine that would make, and it's a gravel drive, I imagine that would make a big difference in the level of impact.
I would agree.
So an RD on?
Yeah, given those criteria, that if you're not taking down trees and you're staying outside the 50 and you're using gravel on the path, the driveway. So.
Okay, great.
Otherwise, I mean, if it's any of those aren't applicable, then probably come with an NOI. So.
Okay.
Okay. So, any public comment on 215 Washington Street? Seeing none, make a motion to issue an order for resource area delineation for 215 Washington Street. Noting the recommendations in the conditions noted in the staff report. Boundary is confirmed for portion of 2 BWs on the site, BVW flags 1 through 31 and A1 through A7, and stream bank flags mean high water 1 through 17. Also noting the local classification type of intermittent stream cannot be determined. The full extent of the wetlands on the project site have not been flagged nor confirmed, so it's only including intermittent stream extending from wetland flag 31 to the east towards, but not touching the stream bank at mean high water 17, and the continuation of the stream underneath the cart path from wetland flag mean high water 17.
87.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Oh, aye.
Blondine, aye.
Katie, aye.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, folks. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Kevin.
Good
Thanks,
night.
Frank. Bye-bye. Okay, next up is 560 Foundry Street.
I am bringing up Mike Toohill. I see his client, Rick
So,
Lincoln.
just as a note here, this was an application that was previously filed, and we requested that the applicant refile so that we were down to only having 3 members of the commission being eligible to vote. And so we thought it was in the best interest of the project to have a full commission. So we have asked the applicant to refile. We've had a number of hearings on this project going back all the way to last February when we had a joint hearing with Planning and Zoning Board on the project. And we've addressed a number of issues, but we're going to start over tonight. And as I understand it, the applicant's going to do a presentation for us, give us an outline of the project in its current state. And then Andrea is going to give us a bit of a summary on her side of things. And we will likely, and we'll obviously go to comments from the commission and public comment on this. And then we will likely continue, or we won't be continuing the hearing till next meeting because there's still a peer review that needs to be done on both the wildlife side and the floodplain. So I think that's a good summary of where we are on this. We have covered this for those of us who've been on the commission. Some of this will be repeating information to us, and for those of you new, you will be hearing it for the first time. So Mike Toohill, you're up.
Yeah, did you bring Rick Lincoln up, Andrea? This is Mike Toohill from Conoco.
I did.
Okay, Rick's gonna start us off.
Great.
Ask him to unmute.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, thanks for hearing us. I know some of you, we've talked to, or I've talked to, over the past 6 months, 9 months. But for the 2 new members, I'm Rick Lincoln. I'm the applicant and the developer and builder. Just a real quick one from me. Mike's got the technical. I'd probably like to step back in time a little bit just to give a real quickie on the history and why I became interested. It started off with the Foundry site, which originally we thought had some warts, and that's what I tend to concentrate on. I'm doing one in North Attleboro now, which is the old Balfour jewelry factory. This one ended up much simpler. There was some old environmental reports done in the 90s, and back then it was all signed off by DEP. But before I purchased it, Conoco came in and we did some extensive digs and drilled some wells around the old sewer system, septic system, I should say. We sampled the stream even, just to see what the water was like, what the sediment was like along the banks. And we didn't really find anything. There was one little hot spot in the middle of the Foundry site, which after I purchased it, we ended up digging out, exporting, and we didn't even have to file with DEP. I mean, it was already off the DEP's list. So I became comfortable with the site. I knew sewer was coming down the road, so that was a big bonus, with eliminating the need for any on-site sewage, so no Title V systems or anything like that. I then got interested in the west side, I'll call it, across the stream. I thought that might be simpler than the old Foundry site, but I was wrong because we found there's a vernal pool and, Mike can wax eloquent on all that stuff. But, there have been some challenges over there, no doubt. What we've worked with the town on was trying to see what we could do to add some value. So there's quite a wide old concrete culvert there probably 150, 200 feet wide, which we've planned on daylighting, ripping all that out, cleaning up the stream, recontouring the stream a bit in that area. There have been several other iterations, I won't bore everybody to tears with that. With that, I'll let Mike take off with all the technical. So unless anybody, well, you can ask me questions later as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Mike?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mike Toohill from Conoco, and I just want to kind of reprise at first what you said, Mr. Chairman. The purpose tonight is to just do an overview of the project, talk about the site, talk about the resource areas on the site, the potential impacts and mitigation, a little bit of where we've been, where we're going, and then obviously request a continuance at the end of this meeting so we can delve into more details with the commission in a more concerted effort at the next meeting. So if I have, do I have control, Andrew? I can share screen?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So just off the top, I just want to explain to the commission what's in the notice of intent. You've probably all seen this. It's all up on Permit Eyes. It's rather extensive because we have a lot of material since 2019 that we've developed for this site, and I've tried to compartmentalize the old material and the new material into different attachments to make it easier for the commission members to go through. So we have some of the perfunctory stuff up top, the notice of intent and the narrative, notice to abutters, things like that, figures. As we get down a little further,
Hey, Mike, just 1 second, Mike. Just as a matter of record, Andrea, can you just confirm we have a butter notification?
Yes, I was waiting for the right moment. We do have proof of a butter notification. It came in today. We do not yet have the DEP file number.
Okay, and just for the record, did we have a butter notifications on 418 Depot and 215 Washington?
Yes, I thought I mentioned that. My apologies.
You may have. I just can't remember. I'm getting old.
It's really bad. We need to take a look right now. It's really bad.
Okay, Rick, you're up. I mean, not Rick. Mike, sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. Thank you very much for doing that.
It's so bad. You see it?
Somebody else is on?
Yeah, hang on a second. I'm trying to figure out.
Right now, Mom, I'm going to cry. What's happening?
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Thank you. So as you get further into the document, there's this site was subject of a river resource area delineation. I'll talk about that in a minute, and that's all in attachment E. The stormwater report and checklist are actually in attachment F. They're up on the site. There were a whole bunch of different subject area memoranda about limited project status, about the ACEC, performance standards, the environmental study that occurred on the site. All of that material is kind of pulled together and bound into attachment G. So there's a lot of disparate information in there, but it's all relevant to the site. The project plans are in attachment H. And really tonight we're going to talk more about attachments I and J than anything else. The resource area impact mitigation plans and table, and the alternatives that we went through in developing the currently proposed plan. And then finally, there's a wildlife habitat evaluation, rather extensive wildlife habitat evaluation that's been somewhat updated since the last hearing, Mr. Chairman. So there's some additional material in there for the commissioners to look at. And then attachment L contains all the bylaw waiver requests. We'll touch on those tonight, but we won't get into those into a lot of detail tonight. Bear with me, I've got a lot of pieces I want to pull up here. So this is the site. Rick talked about it. There's an eastern side of the site where the old foundry was. You can see my cursor moving around there. And the western side of the site which is the wooded side of the site that contains 2 vernal pools. The project, just real quick overview of the project is now a 44 single home, single family development with a shared clubhouse, other shared utilities and amenities. And the site is in the Easton's Compact Neighborhood Overlay District, which promotes compact design and preservation of open space. And I'll get back to this graphic again later on, but the different colors are showing you areas that are going to be held by the individual homeowners in kind of the teal. The darker blue are the areas that are going to be held by the homeowners association. And then the green are areas that are going to be deeded over to the town for conservation purposes. So all of the colored area is within the property that Rick currently owns. He also, there was a piece of property down to the south of the Beaver Brook, and this is Beaver Brook running through the site. This is where it runs in a culvert and then out into this large wetland. And then over on this side is another large perennial stream that then joins with Beaver Brook to the south. This is all town land held by the Conservation Commission down here, part of which was originally part of these 2 sites, but has now been deeded over to the town. The project will connect to town water and sewer. Rick talked about the sewer. This is actually this little outtake of a rectangle here is where the new pump station is when the sewer went into Foundry Street. We're taking kind of a tiered approach to this permit application. So the impact analysis that I did that I'll present tonight includes all of the development, including the site development for the houses themselves. Because all of these homes are going to be individually owned, we want to come back in the future with individual notices of intent where notices of intent are required, but all of the impacts have been accounted for in this filing. So hopefully in the future, it'll be fairly easy to go through, say for this home here, which has an isolated wetland behind it, any of the impacts due to the development of this home site have already been accounted for. And then this property will become town property. So hopefully by the time we get to the notice of intent for this site, for this house or any of the other homes, those are going to be fairly simple because we've already accounted for impacts and we provided mitigation for everything on the site. The project encompasses 4 parcels of land. And then there's a 5th parcel that we're going to be talking about also, and that's this parcel down here, which is held by the town. So the east side of the site, which is this side over here, and I hope you can see my cursor moving around. It's not real clear to me.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So this east side of the site, which will comprise of lot A, E, F, G, and all of the individual homes over here, that's where the foundry was. And so part of the purpose, as Rick mentioned, was to redevelop the Belcher-Melville foundry site, which had been closed since 2007. There was an environmental assessment of the east side of the site, and actually the assessment included this area down in here where the daylighting occurs. And we have LSPs that can hopefully come to the next meeting and speak to you specifically about that if you have specific questions. But the memoranda that was part of the first notice of intent that talks about the environmental assessment is included in that attachment that has the catch-all for all the different materials. So as Rick mentioned, most of the site was disturbed and it was cleaned up to MCP standards. This east side of the site is going to be filled, and it's going to be filled between 6 to 8 feet of fill material. Decreases towards the north and towards the eastern edge of the site, so we can obviously match grades. And then it's going to be deeper fill in here, probably 8 feet of fill. So everything has been cleaned up, but this site is also going to be, in essence, capped with fill. The west side of the site, which includes these large wetland systems here, this is a bordering vegetated wetland. We have 4 isolated wetlands and then a bordering vegetated wetland over here. The west side of the site is largely undisturbed. There were trails and things through there. There were old stone walls in the area, but it's fairly heavily forested. Nice habitat area back in there. So that side of the site is very different than the eastern side of the site. So in the ORAD, which was done in 2019 and then approved, it was approved by the commission in 2019, and there's a copy in the filing. All of the resource area boundaries approved under the ORAD are shown in subsequent graphics that I will show you that are part of an attachment that goes through all of the potential impacts of the development, subject area by subject area. Under the Wetland Protection Act and on this site, there's bank, land under water, bordering vegetated wetland. There's undisturbed riverfront area and there's previously disturbed riverfront area. And the two of those are dealt with differently by the regulations. There is bordering land subject to flooding, and of course there are buffer zones off many of those resource areas. And under the bylaw, we also add isolated vegetated wetlands, which aren't jurisdictional under the Wetland Protection Act, but are under the bylaw. Potential vernal pools, and then in the bylaw, there's the vernal pool itself, and then there's a 0 to 100 feet out from the mean high water of the vernal pool. I keep calling it vernal pool habitat. It is by the bylaw, I guess, the vernal pool, and then out from that, another 100 feet out, so 200 feet away from the mean high water, from 100 to 200 feet is a buffer zone. And so we've counted for all of that and calculated the impacts on all of those different areas. This is attachment J of your packet. And what attachment J does is there we go, I have to scroll down. It goes through the different alternatives that were evaluated, and that's important for the riverfront area, and it's important for the bylaw to understand how this project has evolved over time and how impacts have been minimized over time by reducing the size of the project. So this is an early plan, March 2018. This was a 70 home development. There were actually 48 homes on the western side and 32 on the eastern side. And there were two entrances off Foundry Street. This is the entrance that we're still proposing. And then there was a second entrance. This piece of land is part of the project site. There was a second entrance that came in from here. So we had two entrances off Foundry Street, and there was a connection from east to west running down through this portion of the site. And this was when this portion of the site, I think, was still part of the ownership of this larger parcel. You can see the property boundary hasn't changed. Subsequently became part of the town property. Also in 2018, there was an alternative that looked at 67 homes, 42 on the east and 25 on the west. So a substantial reduction on the west. Still two entrances off Foundry Street, still a connecting road in between. And you can see all the wetlands and buffers on this particular plan as well. It progressed along in 2018. This was a 64 homes, so we're down from 70 to 67 to 64 at this point. And a little different look on the western and eastern side, but same connections to Foundry Street and same interconnection between the two. This is all these plans, this is where the culvert is, and the culvert carries Beaver Brook, and it carries it for 175 feet. So part of this project, which I'll talk about later, is daylighting this and getting the stream back in. And this also has large implications on the floodplain, which I'll talk about in a while too. This is another 64 home development, also developed, and there are variations on the theme. So a little different configuration from the previous one, but again, two entrances off Foundry Street and an interconnecting road. This one, the pretty color one, I had one pretty color one, was a new plan. This was a 62 home development. This was done in January of 2019.
as we were finishing up the ANRAD and getting the ORAD. And so the resource areas, which were fairly well known before because the delineation had been done earlier, were really kind of getting nailed down at this point. So this plan took that into account. Still 2 entrances off Foundry Street and an interconnecting road, and a slightly different configuration, but an interconnecting road nonetheless. And again, we've gone down to 62 at this point. This was in 2020. This was the plan that we originally came in with the notice of intent. We had a couple of different variations of this one as well. That entrance off Foundry Street was eliminated. So there's one entrance off Foundry Street. That roadway that used to be proposed down here to connect the 2 areas was moved to the north near the pump station. So this particular plan had, I have to remember, 46 homes. And we went through, excuse me, several iterations of this in the hearings, in the original notice of intent hearing. So this was where we started the notice of intent, and then we modified it as we went along. So this next one was probably the final, near the final modification towards the end of the original NOI process. The western side of the site configuration changed considerably. This road was redirected to avoid this isolated wetland. This is a 44 home development, so we dropped 2 homes right here to stay away from this isolated wetland. We got further away from this isolated wetland and this one. So again, all of these plans not only reduce the homes from the original 70 down to 44 at this point, but also reduce the potential impact of the project. And bear with me, I'm going to pull up another graphic for you. So this is from the current permitting plan set, the plan set that's in front of you. It's very similar to where we wound up. It's 44 homes. The roadway configuration here to avoid the wetlands is the same. One of the differences is that in the previous plan sets, we had a fire road that was proposed here. It wasn't used as an access to 106 as much was used for emergency services. Rick has agreed to put sprinklers in all of the homes, and so the fire department was comfortable not having that fire access. And what that did is further minimize the impacts. There was a little clip with the fire road at the corner of this wetland and the buffer zone for sure. So we were able to minimize that impact. But other than that, this plan, which is 44 homes, again, avoids these wetland systems. This is a this is a vernal pool over here. We found vernal pool obligates over here. This down here, wetland A is a vernal pool, so it avoids that. It stays outside of the town of Easton 100-foot buffer zone, 100-foot habitat area. Some of it is in the buffer zone, especially as you get just down towards this hammerhead lot. And the eastern side of the site is very similar to what was proposed before. The clubhouse moved a little bit. A couple of the detention basins had to move a little bit. The last notice of intent we had, the fill levels on the eastern side of the site were more in the range of 8 to 10 feet, and now we're 6 to 8 feet. So we're able to further minimize the amount of retaining wall structure on the site, and because of that, we had to do some rearranging of the stormwater system to make everything work. But that's all in the stormwater report, and it all flows now. There are detention systems up in here as well to help mitigate the stormwater from the site. A lot of these changes were a direct result of conversations with the Conservation Commission and the peer reviewers. We had LEC and Woodard and Curran peer review all the material on the previous notice of intent. LEC and Woodard and Curran are peer reviewing this set also. And a lot of the comments and suggestions that came back from the commission and from the peer reviewers have been incorporated into this project plan set. So for me anyway, this is the guts of the notice of intent. What impact are you having and what kind of mitigation are you proposing? So this is an attachment in and of itself to the notice of intent, and we did the same thing that we did the last time. I've actually kept the version numbers. I keep updating the version numbers. The first thing you see in this attachment is a table, and the table, I won't go through all the different numbers. You can read them. Table breaks down temporary versus permanent impact. It breaks down the different resource areas. It makes a distinction between previously disturbed and undisturbed riverfront area. It also talks about total riverfront on site. It gives statistics on the sizes of the wetlands, including the compensatory storage requirement for bordering land subject to flooding. So this table comes from all these graphics that I'm going to show you next. And I'm not going to go into detail on all of them. I'm going to concentrate on the first two. This is the eastern side of the site. And what this beautifully colored graphic is showing you are all of the different resource areas and the different buffer zones. And there's a whole color scheme that's shown in the legend over here to tell you what you're looking at. And then it has the development superimposed on it. So by looking at this graphic, you can see where different elements of the development are with regard to the different resource areas and buffer zones on the site. And again, this is the eastern side. So riverfront is broken down into previously disturbed and previously undisturbed. This is the western side of the site. Same thing. It shows all of the different resource areas, including the new floodplain lines, and I should show that on the eastern side, the new floodplain line that we did through HECRAS modeling, and that's being peer reviewed by Woodward and Curran. Ultimately, this site will go through a FEMA letter of map revision process. And what we're trying to do in the NOI process is bring the modeling and the impact analysis up to the level where not only the town can accept it, but the town can bless it, and we can send it on to FEMA for FEMA's review and blessing. And it's good to note that the peer reviewer from Woodward and Curran that's reviewing this is a former FEMA staff member, and he's a certified floodplain manager and a longtime modeler. So he's been very helpful in helping us put together the model, peer reviewing the model, telling us what needed to be fixed. And we went through, that was part of the delay that we had, Mr. Chairman, in the first go around. Is it's a very complicated system, and Joe has been very helpful in having us work through that system. The next graphics, and I'll stop just briefly on these. What they are is they're couplets, and they're the same east-west side couplets. And the first couplet, this 2A, 2B, shows vernal pools and vernal pool buffer zone, because we don't have vernal pool habitat impact, but vernal pool buffer zone impact. So this is the eastern side. So we have, this is vernal pool A is over here. We have just this very little corner of the replication of the compensatory storage area, which we'll talk about in a minute. Kind of this grading right here clips the buffer zone of that vernal pool habitat. This is the western side of the site, because we have two vernal pools, one here and one here. We have bigger arcs, and this is all, again, this is all buffer zone. It's not the vernal pool itself. It's not vernal pool habitat. It's the buffer zone. And it's pretty far out, a lot of it, pretty far out from the vernal pool itself. The next couplets show isolated wetlands and bordering vegetated wetlands. Again, temporary impact, permanent impact, east side, west side. Every one of these has a table in it that talks about the impacts. All of these numbers were then taken into that first table I showed you, so that you can have one big spreadsheet in front of you to look at impacts and mitigation. This is the next couplet. This is the riverfront, bank, and land underwater impacts. Eastern side of the site, there's a lot of previously disturbed area. And again, riverfront in previously disturbed area is treated differently than riverfront in undisturbed areas. In previously disturbed areas, you're trying to make improvements on that area. You're trying to remove some of the disturbance. In undisturbed areas, such on the western side of the site, you're trying to minimize the impact of riverfront. Okay, so they're treated slightly differently within the regulations. This one also shows, I think on this couplet, we have a crossing here. This is Beaver Brook. This is the brook that runs down here and runs through the culvert and runs off site. We have a crossing, that internal road crossing of Beaver Brook. There's no land underwater impact because we're spanning it. And this is a span that is up to the standards of stream crossing standards of Massachusetts and the Corps of Engineers. We do have some wetland impact due to this roadway system, and a little bit of bank impact because we get close to the bank on this one side here. Here's the rest of the roadway. So the crossing is down here by my cursor, and here's the curvature. And what we tried to do with the curvature is to move it away from the wetlands as much as we could, especially the isolated wetland here. And so we did wind up clipping the top edge of this BVW. I think there's 3,223 square feet total of impact. This crossing itself could be limited project status for roadway crossings, and it's been designed minimum width acceptable to the planning board, so it meets those criteria within limited crossing status. The final couplet is the floodplain, and this is one that has taken us the most time to do work on because of the modeling is very complex. What we've done with the floodplain here is, the floodplain here is the existing condition with this culvert still in place. And this culvert causes this large backwater of flooding up in this area. Once we remove the culvert, which I'll show you in a couple slides, the floodplain shrinks dramatically. But the existing condition has the culvert in place. And so we had to model our impacts against the existing condition. It's not like if we had done the culvert as a separate standalone project first, and then did the development, we'd have a different story, but that's not how this is done. The culvert removal is being done as mitigation, in part of the mitigation for the impacts of this project. So that's the eastern side of the site, fairly substantial floodplain area. And here's all of the calculations having to do with the compensatory storage, the foot-by-foot analysis of fill, and the foot-by-foot analysis of how much compensatory storage is being required. And we are providing more storage than we're filling, which is exactly what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to at least mitigate your fill. And in most cases, in this case, we're over mitigating the fill by about 1,000 cubic yards, quite a bit. This is the western side of the site. The floodplain is not a real big issue on the western side of the site because the floodplain has to do with Beaver Brook. This is what I was talking about. I threw in an extra couplet here. This is the 6A, 6B. This is also floodplain. But this is what would the floodplain look like if and when this channel, daylighted channel gets built as opposed to having this culvert. And you can see, remember the floodplain before was way out here. You can see what happens to the floodplain. All that backwater from the culvert disappears. And we modeled it down through, up and through, so that we don't just export the problem somewhere else. And so by the time we reach the next developed area, streets downstream, the floodplain is exactly what the floodplain is now, its existing condition. So we're not simply pushing the water through and impacting somebody else by doing that. And then the western side of the site, which is very similar to the existing condition because this floodplain over here was fairly well modeled by FEMA. This floodplain here, Beaver Brook, wasn't. And that's why we went through the modeling process. So that's where we are on floodplains. I did speak about this before, the different top property ownerships that will occur after. And we'll see this, slide again later on. So this is the mitigation, for the project. This is the big mitigation area, which is here. This is on town property now, and we're gonna talk about that. What we're proposing to do as part of mitigation is to do some substantial work in daylighting the stream, getting rid of this culvert, daylighting the stream, putting a natural stream channel back in, doing a lot of overbank plantings for the stream channel. This is a wetland area down in here, wetland mitigation area down in here. And the area up here, which we're also doing plantings on, is the floodplain compensation area. So this is a fairly sizable project. The other part of this project is as you go up in here especially, and somewhat down in here, there are materials that were left over by the former industrial operations on the site, mostly metals. And so we're proposing to do a cleanup and remove those materials from the site. And so that removal occurs both on the project site and it occurs on the town property as well. So we're trying to do an ecological restoration. This by itself would qualify as an ecological restoration project under the Wetland Protection Act. But the Wetland Protection Act doesn't recognize hybrid projects, so you can't have an ecological restoration project filing with homes in it. So that's why we filed it as a traditional notice of intent. This is a cross section. Here's this section here running across here. So this next graphic is the cross section view, giving you an idea of the floodplain compensation, grading going down to the floodplain compensation area. This is the wetland. Here's the old culvert that's coming out, the 54-inch culvert that's coming out. Here's the wetland area down here, the stream channel. And then as you go to the north, this is going north now up towards the site, the overbank area. So that's what this channel in here, this area in here, looks like in cross section. There's a more detailed view, and we have information on how we propose to build the channel. There are memoranda that are included in the attachments that talk specifically about construction methods for this, that talk about daylighting construction methods. There are memoranda that talk about the bridge construction as well, and construction scenario. And then there are plans that show all of that as well. And these happen to be the plans that show the proposal for the channel. And we took 3 different sections through the channel to give an idea of how the new channel itself transitions from the existing Beaver Brook at the upstream side and downstream side, and then creates Beaver Brook in an open channel flow condition. This is the bridge crossing right here. That's at the northern end of the site. And we are proposing to put in a wetland replication area. This is an existing wetland here. We're going to put a wetland replication area just up against the existing wetland system. This is a wetland fill right here due to the roadway. This is a wetland fill due to the roadway. Our compensation is far in excess of 1-to-1. It's over 2-to-1 for the wetland fills here. If you look at the wetland that's being created here and the wetland that's being created down at the southern side of the site.
Mike, it's actually a 3-to-1 mitigation.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was Lori McDonald correcting me as she always does when I run off track. I promised you I'd come back to this. This is part of the mitigation, is the open space for the project. We have wetland replication, we have compensatory storage, we have Beaver Brook daylighting, we have the cleanup of Beaver Brook and the environs around Beaver Brook. We have the open space, and we were also talking, we don't have it on any of these graphics yet, we've been talking to the commission in previous hearing about trail connectivity. There are some trails down here on the town property, and we had explored in previous go-around different options of trying to provide trail systems on this site. And I think that's a discussion that we need to continue, because I think where we left it is we had actually taken, other than maybe a trail connection right here at the base of this hammerhead, we had taken out most of the other trail connectivity because we had talked about coming in behind these homes. Then you wind up with issues about being in the buffer to this wetland. You get closer to the vernal pool. Some commissioners felt that was okay. Other commissioners didn't. So I think we need to engage the commission in a discussion about trail connectivity. That's something that the applicant has always proposed, has never been adverse to. And so I think it's just an open discussion at this point as to exactly where the trail is going to go. Do we want to run a trail through the mitigation area? Do we not want to run a trail through there? If so, we have to cross the new channel. It's not like we could walk across the culvert anymore. So there's a lot of questions about how to connect trails, but I think connecting trails, especially in development like this, especially if we can do something like a loop trail system, people can go out for a walk and do a walk, not just through the neighborhood, but do a walk through the woods and come back up to their home in a short period of time. So that's something that's important to the applicant as well. It's a great amenity for the homeowners. The final thing is we have a number of waiver requests that we have to put in because of the bylaw. We have waivers for vegetated wetlands, bank, land underwater, land subject to flooding, riverfront, vernal pool, and buffer zones. The last attachment in your package has all the draft waiver requests in it. The peer reviewers, Andrea, and the peer reviewers are going to be looking through that. And Andrea, we did confirm that we used the 2020 updated bylaw for the waiver request. Andrea and I had a discussion about that today. Little concerned, both of us, but we did. So that's a real big picture overview of the project, of the impacts, of the mitigation, and of the process that we've been through with the commission and all the alternatives that we've looked at with the commission. And so I think at this point, Andrea wanted to jump in and say a few things, Mr. Chairman, if that's all right with you.
Yep.
Mike, if you can keep up that slide of your overall project, that'd be terrific.
You want this one?
That one is cool.
Okay.
Yeah, can you get rid of the sidebar on the left of all the sheets and just zoom a little bit?
Like so?
Yeah, just a little bit more. Thank you. So I just wanted to point out that some of you have been through this for a long time, and so have I. And I think that the rest of the members will probably come along to realize that this is a pretty thoughtful design throughout all the alternatives. You have a vernal pool right in the center of the property. You have another vernal pool over here on lot C. And then these interior isolated vegetated wetlands that aren't state regulated, but are town regulated. The project has managed to move all the lots around so that now you're not dealing with direct wetland impacts, you're dealing with buffer zone impacts, except when it is the realignment of this roadway and daylighting of the stream. Big proponent of daylighting streams. You saw the difference in the proposal for the floodplain. What happens when you get rid of a constriction of a culvert and you put in a naturalized area that has the ability to spread out? This is the type of things you get grants approved to do. So it's getting done by a private developer. The road alignment is, in my opinion, the least impactful, but there is going to be impacted. And so the wetlands that are being created are in the same system and meet the standards of, putting in 2 to 1, and Lori said in this case 3 to 1. The reason you do 2 to 1 as a regulatory standard is because there's a good chance of wetlands not being as successful as their original counterparts. So if you do 2 to 1, you might not end up losing any wetlands. I have real great faith, and I think a lot of you who've been through this process recognize the Conoco team is going to stay with this project and have thought through the details. So when it comes to the waiver requests, they minimized impacts through the design, and they brought in mitigation. What Mike didn't mention, but was very curious, was in doing the wildlife evaluation, they found that a section of Beaver Brook had been redirected into a small pipe. And so I saw that this is going to continue. They're going to, Mike, I want you to confirm this, that they're actually taking out that pipe that no longer has any use. It must have been redirecting the flow back when this was an industrial site. They're going to take that out, and that'll also, that was modeled in to the floodplain too. That'll help with the natural flow conditions. If anybody's curious, if you're like a total nerd, the reason why the floodplain was so difficult to model here is if you look at the FEMA map, you'll see that FEMA in 2009 recognized that there was a dam on the Mulberry Brook, but when they came to the Beaver Brook, they thought it was one continuous flow. Somehow they missed the dam there. So it's not surprising that that a letter of map revision will be done, and I can attest that Woodard and Kern has been an enormous help with getting this FEMA analysis done. We're not complete yet. But I've been in regular contact with them. The floodplain boundary is going well, so the notice of intent opened with the proposed line in anticipation that Woodard and Kern's review, if they make any edits at all, it'll be there'll be the engineering details. I did, of course, get my staff report to you. I think it was 6:15, so there is an error in the waiver request being a little long. But what I tried to do was just help you focus on what the main issues are. The riverfront in a perennial stream in an ACEC, this is not mapped habitat, but it is a wellhead protection area, and the Canoe River ACEC is about protecting a sole source aquifer that is used by Easton and upwards of 6 towns for almost 50% of our water supply. So it's something Commission's been very responsive about in the past. So they're still going to be impervious within 100 feet of the wetland boundaries in an ACEC. Those are the vegetated boundaries. Those are the stream banks. That's one waiver. The other waiver, of course, is filling the BVW, and I believe you've got the right alignment. The next waiver is actually, I should have to give a waiver to get rid of a culvert and put in a stream system, but it is an ecological restoration project. And the reason there's a term ecological restoration projects in the state regulations now is because they're trying to encourage these projects by front loading the permitting. They're trying to say that if you provide this level of information, then you can guarantee that it'll be approved with these type of conditions. the type of work that we're doing here, the type of review that I'll be doing with LEC is looking at the ecological, they're providing the level of information that the state would require, and the kind of conditions that we would put in will be probably very predictive of what the ecological restoration says. So we're using that as a guide. I do believe that the trail network is something that Commissioner Spadia wants to speak to. So that stays on the topic for more detail on June 7th. The work on town land is, if you approve the work on town land, then recognize that there will have to be a lease agreement or whatever the legal agreement is to allow a private work on town property. That'll be reviewed by town council. This very pretty plan, all green, in the legend that's land permanently protected, given to the town of Easton. Yay, fee simple, and it connects in with the rest of your land. So permanent protection to quite a bit. I think it's 16 acres of land. I think, I don't recall directly. Previous land use impacts. No kidding. Who doesn't know that the eastern portion of this property is the old foundry site, and the western portion of the property was undeveloped. So the fence line of the foundry properties pretty much a degraded site, and it'll stay that way unless somebody comes along and develops it. With the development, you get pluses and minuses, and one of the pluses is that you can address and make the site usable in a safe way. They have been very careful in reviewing the past land use practices. It's been reviewed to the mass hazardous waste standards, the mass contingency plan standards, fully remediated. But it's always been a question, so Conservation Commission did do a peer review by Woodard and Curran of all publicly available information, and that is in the packet. It's a January 3rd memo. And the key to the redevelopment is the plan here is to add fill, which now is 6 to 8 feet instead of more. But it's enough fill so that he never has to excavate into the site to get to the native material. Not that it's native. And so there is a requirement through the hazardous waste regulations that if you should excavate into and come up and find any contamination, then you do stop development, you do notify, you do properly report and remediate if necessary. That's always been the standard for the Conoco team, and it's the appropriate standard to redevelop a brownfield site. Peer reviews continuing. We have LEC doing the wildlife habitat evaluation just to review it again, and they'll look at the waivers with me because they've done this a lot, and there will be wildlife impacts. And so the question will be, what is the benefit versus potential harm, and having a second professional with me saying are you better off before or after is helpful. I find so it plans to be continued. I hope that Mike and I acknowledged all the different issues that we expect are going to have to be hammered out. And unless you have others, I'll talk in more detail about how it actually meets those performance standards and waiver request standards at this final design.
Just to one other major positive impact of this proposal is that they are proposing to install a traffic signal at the end of Pequannock, where the development driveway comes out. So that anybody who travels on Foundry Street there is well aware of the traffic hazard that Pequannock is, either coming off of Pequannock or even trying to turn a left onto Pequannock. So that is one of the large public interests here that the developer is including in this project as well. So in addition to some of these other things.
And it may seem nerdy, but in the same sort of venue, your septic system, your sewer system is going to work a lot better when you have volume of flow. And you really do need a good volume of flow for the system to work.
And the betterment fees from the project are helping to pay for that new sewer system as well.
So the only other thing is I see Lori McDonald has her hand up, and I didn't know if she had something to add right now, or we could move on to commissioner comments or.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to that 36-inch RCP that's carrying low flow around to past the outlet of the culvert that's going to be removed. Yeah, so that 36 RCP actually starts up at the top of letter L at the word lot F, and it carries low flow right past the entire eastern part of the site to downstream from the 54-inch culvert. So once that 36-inch RCP is removed, you're going to be returning low flow to about 400 linear feet of the Beaver Brook Channel that currently runs dry in the summertime. I was actually out there towards the end of August, beginning of September, and I walked the entire length of Beaver Brook from the inlet of the box culvert up to 36-inch inlet, and it was dry, but that culvert 36-inch RCP was flowing. So there's a lot more that bank is going to be restored than is currently shown with removal of the box culvert. Another comment I just wanted to make: outlet of 54-inch box culvert is actually about 3 feet above the ground elevation of the wetland. So there's a significant hydraulic jump. So any aquatic life that wants to make its way up towards Old Pond is basically stopped during low flow by that hydraulic jump at the outlet of the 54-inch. Just a note.
This is the stuff that gets me excited.
Yeah, I mean, it's a significant improvement to Beaver Brook, not only as a result of removal of this 54-inch box, but there's significant improvement upstream from the box culvert as well.
Okay, great. Thanks for the additional info. I see that there are some comments in the Q&A box that I will get to, but I did want to give the commission an opportunity to provide any feedback first. At first, from my own standpoint, I appreciate the time that Mr. Tuaho and Mr. Lincoln have spent putting together this presentation and providing us with the overview. Andrea, I think, has done a good job of summarizing what our needs are as far as understanding meeting the waiver requests and mitigation requirements that are going to be required with some of the disturbance areas. So I appreciate the work that she's done in putting that forward. And hopefully at the next hearing, we get to hear from some of the peer reviews as well, to give us a second opinion, not just from the applicant, but from our own peer review consultants to give us an idea of the project as well. So from my standpoint, I do want to mention that I know there's some question about the trail network. I think probably, I know certainly speaking for myself, and I know Commissioner Spady has been that supportive of it as well. That connectivity to the trail network, especially if we can try and connect it up to the Bay Circuit Trail and get Bay Circuit Trail off of the roadways, which is where it is right now. That would be a substantial benefit for the trails as well as the town and neighborhood. So I do agree with that we do need to work on that and probably put some solid plans together on that. And I'll probably ask Commissioner Spadia to head that up and put something that we can actually put into the plans. That would be my best choice here. So I'm going to just go around the horn here for a moment. Start with Ben Carroll.
Yeah, more than anything, I want to second what Rory said and just thank you for taking the time to present this in detail. As you may know, I'm new to the commission and I've read through what's been proposed. I don't have many specific questions for you tonight. I will probably have more next time, having been informed through this presentation. We'll take a second look. One is very surface level question. The road proposed off of Lot B, is that a fire road or is that still being proposed?
No, this fire road is coming out.
Okay, so is that, and then could you speak briefly to the decision to move the access road between the east and the west side closer to the road?
This part of it here, sir?
Yes.
This is Rick Lincoln.
Yeah.
May I speak?
Yes.
That probably gets back even a little bit before Mike Toohill. So back and forth with the town several times. We really wanted to go from the bottom there, Lot L, and then run it right across town land and then over the daylighted stream, put a nice new bridge there and everything. But it became super problematic legally because of the designation as Concom land. As it was explained to me by town council, and I think Andrea remembers this. I mean, it almost takes an action in legislation. So we started scratching our heads and wanted to get away from that other entrance way up in the front that you saw early on.
Yep.
Because we traded some wetland impact as it's currently shown with vernal pool buffer impact, which would have happened coming in the other way. So we thought that was the best alternative, and it's a little bit of history behind that.
I think too, the original, if you remembered one of the earlier drawings, Ben, because I was actually part of this discussion, it was a little straighter.
Yeah.
And the straighter configuration had a much greater wetland impact. It was like double the square footage of wetland impact. So actually curving it a little bit decreased that bordering vegetated wetland impact down to a couple thousand square feet, as opposed to, I think it was, somewhere around 4,000 or 6,000 square feet before if it was going straight across. So that little curve in it was actually something that the prior chair actually suggested as maybe a better configuration.
Correct, and that's actually shown in that alternatives analysis plan set. So if you go through that particular attachment, you can see the evolution even of this road to the north, let alone taking the one out of the south and taking out the extra entrance off Boundary Street, which would have gone through vernal pool habitat.
Well, I appreciate that. And then finally, I'd second what's been said. I'd love to see a trail network in here.
Okay. Carol?
Sure, thank you, Rory. Um, and thank you for the terrific presentation, Mike and Rick. Um, I have about a dozen things I'd like to bring up. I know that's a lot. We're trying to get to the big pieces here to find out what we want to ask the applicant to address in future hearings. But I'll make a start in no particular order. It might come out a little messy, but I ask you to bear with me and try to understand what I'm trying to say, which Rory, you're very good at. With all due respect to Mr. Lincoln, who you introduced yourself as the applicant, the developer, and the builder. So with all due respect, the guy who owns the land and who's developing the land and building the land and who's environmentally testing the land, that does not pass the sniff test of good practice. You know, and I'm not just speaking for myself, I'm speaking for people in the community who are more protectionist, who are more cautious about the environment, who want to make sure that everything is done in an upright way. I'm not saying that you're not an upright company at all. I'm sure that you are. But in this case, you know, I just want to be, on behalf of the people that I've spoken with, come on, let's get a second opinion with this environmental testing. You know, the peer reviewers can have access to publicly available information, but there can be some things that go on privately that a peer reviewer can have no access to whatsoever. And, you know, and that's another reason that having the applicant doing the testing does not pass the sniff test. In my opinion.
Carol, just one thing, I just want to caution us to be respectful of the applicant, and if there's a request to be made, then I think that there's a request to be made without you know, denigrating the applicant or the process in and of itself. So I just would appreciate that. I think probably try and steer away from some inflammatory language would probably be best for the process.
Sure, thank you. I do believe, Rory, that I started out with all due respect, and I do mean that.
I think as soon as someone says all due respect, the respect goes out the door. So I really think that that's a little bit of a, you know, you can't say that and then follow it up with, you know, inflammatory comments.
Okay, so my request is, thank you, that we have a second opinion on environmental testing.
It was done and it's in the packet by Woodard and Curran.
So you're saying that Woodward and Curran did the testing?
They did the evaluation of the testing that was done.
Right. So what I'm saying, Andrea, is that the applicant did the testing and the peer reviewer has access only to information that is publicly available. Is that right?
The LSP that did the testing is required to do it at a certified state lab, and the results would come back the same regardless of who brought the sample to the lab.
Right. So who's doing the sampling? And who chooses where the sampling is done?
Say a licensed site professional is very similar to a professional engineer or a professional wildlife scientist or a professional land surveyor. There are professional rules and regulations on how you perform things that one person's, it takes all subjectivity out of it.
Okay, thank you. So one specific question I have is, have a report of 1994, Belcher Corp. Applied to Mass DEP for a beneficial use determination to use sand from the site for construction and other applications. In a letter to DEP, Belcher cited a February 94 letter from DEP that stated that the sand had total petroleum hydrocarbons, THP levels, in the range of 410 milligrams per kilogram to 22,000 milligrams per kilogram. So what I'd like to know was one of the sample sites, the site that had the 22,000 reading.
Would you like the LSP to come?
That would be my request. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, I think if there's questions about the LSP report, that the best person to answer those questions would be the LSP. Mr. Toole, Mr. Lincoln, is that something that we could arrange for a future meeting?
We can do that next meeting if you like.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we had the LSP at our initial meeting, and he answered our questions at that time. But now that we've reopened the hearing and the questions coming up again, it may be best to reaffirm those findings and answer any specific questions the commission may have about the specific samples.
Thank you. Okay, so I have another question I want to make a note of that. So thank you. So that's number one. Economic value of the existing wetland value services that the town residents receive. Valuing getting an economic value of ecosystem services is a field, it's a study, it's a practice that's been going on for, Mike Toohill, you probably know better than me how long that field of study and practice has been going on, but it's not a new thing. And for the benefit of the public, I would like to see a report on, so here's my request, Lori, the economic value of the current ecosystem services of this activity area, and what happens when the western area is in an ACEC is clear cut to put houses in, and it's mitigated. There's a gap in services between what's there now and what will be after the clear cutting, and after a year, and after 2 years, and 10 years, and 20 years. So I'd like to see an economic report of any losses that the public would endure in services during this project and after. That's my request.
So is that do we use the economic value of wetland resources in any sort of evaluation in our regulations? Is that stated anywhere? Because I haven't seen that.
No, I agree with you. That's a good point. Yeah, but it is, if these services are taken away from the public, then the public has to pay to replace them. Like, what's the replacement cost of these services? We're supposed to be protecting.
But I think that that's what we're trying to do when we look at mitigation and replication and wildlife habitat creation with daylighting of the stream. I mean, I think those are evaluations that we use in our own evaluations of the work that's being done, and as well as the professional opinions that we'll be hearing from both our consultants and the applicants' consultants related to those type of things. So I'm saying that while the applicant may provide such a thing, I personally would not use that as my barometer to determine whether or not the work that's being proposed and the offset to the work is being, that's being proposed, is appropriate or not. So from my own standpoint, I wouldn't need an economic value to make that determination.
Right. So,
If I could also add to that, Carol, you need to treat all projects according to the same set of regulations and performance standards, because you need to show your fairness and how you're not being arbitrary.
well said, yep. And this is not the first time I've asked for this. Thank you for saying that. So part of the value of economic valuation, I believe, is that, and I don't think any of us have touched on this yet tonight, is that we've touched on performance standards. But if I can read from 5033, the burden of proof going forward and burden of proof.
Can you just reference the what you need, but we don't?
Sure.
Can we just make the point without reading the regulations? That would be my preference.
Okay, so the point is that the work will have no adverse effects on any of the bylaw wetland values. And so if we had an economic number, that would help us evaluate the impacts. It goes on to say, and further shall contribute to the protection of the bylaw by complying with the performance standards. So it seems like we have a practice or a habit of steering clear of the burden of proof aspect. So on the one hand, we don't have an economic valuation in our bylaw or regs, but we don't have a recent history of employing or demanding or implementing the burden of proof either. It's not just
so to be very clear, I believe that we require the burden of proof every single time. There's simply a disagreement among commissioners about whether or not the applicant has met the burden of proof. So I would say that this commission is quite aware of the burden of proof, and that we hold that standard and we uphold that standard and require the applicants to meet it when a waiver, when these things are required. So I think I think it's the opinion that you're presenting, that's your opinion, that we don't hold the burden of proof. I'm making the statement here as the chair of this commission that in every case where we demand a burden of proof, it is met. If we want to start stating, and I think there are times when we've had discussions about whether or not the burden of proof has been met, where the decision is specifically stated where we felt that the burden of proof had been met. So I will be clearer on it moving forward, but I don't believe that we've ever skirted the issue about burden of proof.
Thank you.
If you want this app, and if you know the burden of proof and the waiver requests and everything else that is happening here is the linchpin of this particular application, so I think it comes in play in this particular case. Your choice is to make an economic evaluation of whether or not the burden of proof is being met. I'm not saying, I'm saying that I don't need to have an economic value to make that determination about whether there's been an adverse impact or not. So,
thank you. So my next, just a nice segue to a burden of proof point that I'm concerned about, which is mitigation. And let me have my notes here. Mr. Toohill, Mike, we have you on one of our meetings last year. It may have been in March. You were saying that you had in the past served on panels at Mass Association of Conservation Commissioner events. So you're familiar with him. You said that he is very sour on mitigation because of the high rate of failure. And as the burden of proof in an ACEC, is that the applicant has to meet a standard where there is no doubt or uncertainty about what the applicant is claiming is true. You yourself told us about a professional gentleman, Joe Larson at UMass, who doesn't believe in mitigation because it often fails. So you yourself have provided doubt and uncertainty. Another piece of doubt and uncertainty is a Mass DEP wetland mitigation success report published in March of 2002.
So Carol, are we arguing the decision now? Because we really don't even have this information in front of us. So can we maybe focus in on information that we need to have the applicant provide to us so that when we get to the point of evaluating waiver requests and mitigation, that we have it in front of us, as opposed to sort of arguing a decision that hasn't even been proposed yet?
I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure I'm following you. Would you like me to share this report so that the applicant?
I just don't think I think it's outside the scope of what we're trying to accomplish here tonight, is what I'm suggesting. I said what we're trying to do is get the applicant a list of information that we think he's going to need to bring to us at a future meeting, so that we can get questions answered. And so I'm just trying to use our time appropriately here, as opposed to sort of making an argument about whether mitigation is appropriate or not. It's certainly written into our regulations. And if you're saying right now that you won't accept any mitigation, then I think if that's what you're stating, I'm not quite sure. Is that what you're stating, is that mitigation doesn't work and that we can't accept that as any offset to disturbance?
I'm saying that Mr. Toohill has given us reason to have doubt and uncertainty in the success of mitigation, and it's his burden to prove without doubt or uncertainty that he can make it work. And we have a piece of evidence from Mass DEP that says most mitigation fails. So that's another piece of evidence saying, Mr. Toohill, you have your work to do.
Can I correct that, Mr. Chairman?
What's that, Mr. Toohill?
Can I correct that, please?
Sure.
I don't want to engage in a debate, Ms. Lundin, but I did not say that mitigation doesn't work. I have pointed out that there are those like Dr. Larson, who's done studies of mitigation areas in different parts of the state, who sees in poorly designed mitigation high failure rate. That does not mean that mitigation does not work. That means that mitigation needs to be designed correctly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move on to wildlife, if you could. I kind of randomly picked a page out of the wildlife and wildlife habitat analysis, which is attachment K. And I was reading about on page 34 of the PDF and the page labeled 27 in the document itself. It's about reduction of hard mass producing vegetation. And to quote, to mitigate for lost shagbark hickory within the RFAs, the flood storage compensation riverfront enhancement area will be planted with an abundance of American hazelnut with some white oak, both of which are excellent food sources for a variety of mammals. Hazelnuts planted in the replacement area will produce a crop of nuts within 2 to 5 years, while white oak will take about 20 years to produce acorns. So my question is, the mast-eating animals who survive the clear cutting of their habitat, what are they supposed to eat while literally waiting for years for the replacement mast production? To go further, again, animals that escape and survive, when they escape, they're gonna have to go to neighboring areas of woods. And they're gonna have to compete with the existing wildlife populations there for a fixed supply of resources. I'm pretty sure I showed you this before in the previous hearings, but we have something from page 83 of Nature's Best Hope by Douglas W. Talmay that shows a graph. It's a basic middle school supply and demand curve. When the demand on resources go up, the supply goes down, which causes the wildlife there to go into decline because there are less resources. And then any wildlife that is, let's see, it's normal for populations of wildlife to have fluctuations when it's higher and lower. That's very normal. However, by putting wildlife in that stress situation where the supply of resources go down, you can have populations just wiped out when in a downturn in their population. And there's nothing in our bylaw that says that only rare or endangered or the species in danger are protected. It does not say that. It doesn't say populations only are protected. So I don't understand. I'd like you to explain to us how clear cutting habitat and all the animals that cannot escape, the small mammals, the reptiles, the insects, how is killing, injuring, removing those in a resource area, how is that protecting our wildlife value?
So the request here is, to have a better understanding of the wildlife habitat evaluation that's been done and as well as will be peer reviewed by LEC, right?
Right. But Mr. Toohill used the word holistic in our last hearing, and I would like to see a holistic look, just not square feet. I want to look at the vertical, the canopy, the shrub layer, the understory, and there's a lot more to it than the mammals and birds and amphibians. By definition, insects are also protected wildlife. And Mr. Toohill, you may appreciate that. I heard that you're a fan of insects. Wilson, if all of mankind were to disappear, the world would regenerate back to the rich state of equilibrium that existed 10,000 years ago. If insects were to vanish, the environment would collapse into chaos. So, Mr. Toohill, I believe that Commissioner Scadia and I had asked you, and you had agreed to provide us with information on the impacts to insects, and I would like to ask you again to do that, please.
Well, I had not agreed on that. You did ask that, and you brought that up in the last hearing. And I do want to point you to Wetland Protection Act section when the DEP talked about how they came about putting the wildlife habitat evaluation and wildlife habitat considerations into the act. And they very specifically said that they excluded all invertebrates from those studies because they are the higher animals, if you will, are good representations of what would have to invertebrate populations. So they specifically excluded having to do those kinds of insect studies. And then specifically also, the DEP said that the wildlife habitat sections of the Wetland Protection Act are not about wildlife per se. They're about wildlife habitat. And you have to look at the different aspects of habitat, which we did in the report, and which will be peer reviewed by LEC. So I'd like to defer further conversation about the wildlife habitat evaluation until LEC has had a chance to weigh in on their thoughts on it.
Right, thank you. And I would request, because wildlife and wildlife habitat are separate and distinct values in Easton, I would appreciate a report that has more focus on the wildlife itself, if at all possible. Thank you. Let's see. went out to I wandered into the woods, I parked over at the old pond across the street. And I wandered over and I came across some debris that looked like industrial debris. I would like to show a few photos to you, if I may, and describe to you where they are and some of the wetland flags that were there, so we can understand what I saw and where I saw it. Would that be okay, Rory?
Yep.
Thank you. Now I have to find those.
I'll stop share so you can take over there.
Thank you. Okay, so share screen. Okay, so like you've probably seen a lot of barrels, and Rick, too, you've seen these barrels out there. So this is an area where here there's a blue flag, and if I remember right, that is PVPA flag. And right over here we have pollen covered water, and we have 3 barrels. Is it okay if I move on to the next one? Okay. Here we have what may be asbestos on a bank in the same area. Here we have a close-up of what may be asbestos.
But on what can I just ask a question on what basis are we assuming that's asbestos?
Agreed.
But by the looks of it.
What about that makes you think it's asbestos?
Well, like I said, it's potential asbestos. I'm not saying that it is, just resembles.
Okay, but that's quite
your rug
supposition there.
Well, I'm not an asbestos expert, but I have seen.
We could have labeled it unknown material.
Okay.
I mean, again, it's a little inflammatory to refer to it as asbestos.
Well, Rory, I said it was potential asbestos.
It's inflammatory to label it potential asbestos without any determination of what it is. I mean, I don't know. So I'm just trying to understand on what basis it was labeled asbestos.
Right. Well, my request is that we find out what it is.
Carol, if you don't mind me asking, where did you find that?
I'll show you in a minute.
Okay.
Here is what is this stuff called? Slag. There's quite a bit of slag out there. It's I'm not a industrial waste expert, but there's quite a bit of pieces of slag here and there. I've read that some slag can contain heavy metals. I'd like to find out more about the slag. There's a nice big piece of it. Another nice big piece of it. Another piece right there. Here is a couple of flags. Down here is an old grate and but to get us closer to where, oh yes, this, I have better pictures of this, but this kind of ivory colored thing over here, when I saw it, I'm not saying it is, but when I saw it, it made me wonder if it might be an asbestos ceiling tile that are known to have been on the property. Made me wonder. Here's a close-up of it. Couple more barrels, more barrels. This stuff, I would like to know what that is. Here's some, what I thought was pretty strange looking soil. It was very kind of dark and very gritty, like the particle size of sand. It made me wonder if it was foundry sand. And I have a couple more pictures.
So can we, just before we go much further, can we get to where the location of this is?
Yes.
Is this in areas that's gonna be disturbed, or is this in the undisturbed, the potentially undisturbed area that's gonna be conservation?
Right, I will tell you, Andrea and I were talking it over earlier, and it may be in the area west of, Andrea, help me here, west of, sorry, I want to get out of this.
So Carol had given me some flag numbers. And I can take a screenshot and send it to, I can take a screenshot and send it to Mike and all of you.
And that's great. I guess, what is the question about this, Carol?
Well, it's possible that if this location is on the property rather than town property, I would think the town and the residents would want to know what some of these materials are, what the extent and possible toxicity of some of these materials may be. Because if the town is going to kind of take ownership of them, then I would think the town would want to be very cautious about taking ownership of toxic materials, if there are any toxic materials there. Here we go. So here's where we are. This is PVPD A111. Is where it's very close to where these 1, 2, 3, 4 photos were taken that show some of the same barrels as the PDF that I showed you. There's that, there's that.
Is
Here's
this on
that.
the east side of Vernapool A, Andrea, do you know?
That's what it looks like.
Like between the culvert and Vernapool A?
Yes, it was the proximity to the flag PCP A111.
Okay.
That made me think that it might be outside the area, outside your work area. But you, if you could,
Yeah, if it's on the east side of that PVP and it's not near the culvert, it's outside of the work area for sure. And I understand, the concern about these materials being not just here, but in other places on Beaver Brook. And the applicant has already stated that they're going to be doing cleanup of some of these areas out here. I guess, Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering, is this a wetlands issue? Is this a jurisdictional issue? This is a transfer of land issue, which is, part of this process. But I'm wondering where this fits in regulatorily for us.
I mean, I think that was part of my question in understanding exactly where the materials were, as opposed to, because I think that changes what the issue is. Whether or not it's related to the project or whether it's related to the public interest as far as transfer of land. I think that I'm going to be a little bit cautious and not sensationalize what's been presented here, because I think that industrial waste has been there for quite some period of time. So, I mean, I think I'd have to know better exactly where it was, and if the area was to be disturbed, then I think we would certainly need to know what it was. If the land isn't going to be disturbed, that has a whole different set of questions.
Okay.
I think that answers the question. Sort of.
So if I may, speaking of disturbance, I'm pretty concerned about the culvert. If I understand right, Beaver Brook flows directly beneath the soil pile, the foundry soil pile, through the culvert. And if that's culvert's gonna be removed, that foundry sand is not beach sand. And I'm curious, I would like to know more, Mr. Toohill, how that works. How can soil be disturbed if it's foundry waste, if it's toxic foundry waste? How can that be disturbed without it causing more harm?
So is there any evidence that the soil above the culvert is contaminated?
If I could just suggest that I might have misspoke when I said they're going to actually physically remove. It might be quite possible that they're just going to cap, and what they're going to do is keep the flow from going down that pipe.
Right,
and
just plug
get
it.
back in Beaver Brook. Mike,
Right, there are different ways to abandon culverts, and removal is one of the methods, but you can also put flowable fill and cap them. You can cap the end of the pipe. There are different ways of treating it. I don't know for a fact that this culvert is being removed, and I can have the LSP talk to you next time about the investigations that were done in that specific area and what they found in the soil profile in that area. And then I will also talk to the engineers about specifically how they want to deal with the 36-inch pipe as opposed to the 54-inch pipe, which we know is going to be removed, and have the stream channel rerouted.
Right, so Mike, that reminds me of, if the stream channel is going to be rerouted, does that not involve pushing around the foundry soil pile? And how does that work with keeping any contaminants contained or managed?
Well, again, this is an LSP issue, Carol, and that's not my qualification. So I'd rather have the LSPs and the engineers talk about it. I'm happy to talk to you about wetlands issues.
Thank you. I think that's all my big bullet points. So thank you, Rory, and everyone.
Appreciate it. Mike?
Yes.
No, Mike Spadia.
Mike Spadia. The other Mike.
The only thing I was concerned with is if if we do a trail system, that we could maybe talk about something that we would postpone, say a year after the construction is finalized and finished with foundering, if it goes to plan, just to give, I feel, the wildlife itself a chance to decompress, do its thing, and then we can go in there and then build a trail. If that's what we end up doing. Other than that, that's really all I had to add. That's just my concern.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something certainly we can consider, and it doesn't have to all be staged at the same time. And in fact, there's some benefit, as you said, to. I mean, you don't want to have a trail network in there while they're doing construction, have them the public walking through a construction site anyway.
Right, just had so much pressure in it. It's not needed. The trail is not that necessary to be rushed.
Yeah, but I think I certainly would like to see some preliminary thoughts about what that trail system should be. So.
Oh, absolutely, it should be planned, and that's why I think it kind of it works with, say, getting in contact with Big Circuit and developing an actual plan, developing the people. I think that could take a year, and that could be perfect. So.
Okay, so. So I'm going to just go through some Q&A here, and I'm going to lump some of them together because they're from one member of the public first. In Ms. McManus, do you want to speak to these instead of doing this? We can promote you and you can ask the questions directly. I'd much rather do that than I'm not quite sure of some of these questions myself, so what they mean. So I'm going to promote Amy McManus. Ms. McManus?
She's muted.
Can unmute yourself. There you go. Hi, can you just identify yourself, name, address, and then you can go through whatever questions you want.
Hi, my name is Amy McManus. I live at 51 William Street in North Easton, Massachusetts. I have been following the story of this property for over 10 years, and I became concerned when it was rezoned from industrial to business residential. I had learned from my involvement on a group that looked at the threats to Shovel Shop Pond that disturbing buried contamination is risky business. That's what I was told, and that's what I believe. So I look at this property similarly, that it is contaminated land and that it will be disturbed. Before all of the current work started at Belcher Foundry, I went to the Board of Health myself after hitting all sorts of roadblocks, trying to get information by emailing people, and just decided on my own to go to the Board of Health and sit and start to read. And the pile of information at the Board of Health was about 2 feet, 2.5 feet high. And in those files was lots of information that I was shocked to read. I have quite a bit of I have copies of most of it. So I'm very happy to share that with you. I see you as the protectors of the land in Easton. That's how I view your board. I see the Board of Health as the protectors of any sort of health threat, and I see you working, hand in hand, right? So that's why I'm here. And I know that this development is in a property of critical concern. And just like the shovel shops are located right next to Shovel Shop Pond in a zone 2. This is a similar situation. You have the Quanticut, you have the Mulberry Brook, you have water running through this property, and south of it are the town wells. So it's definitely important to think about what's going to happen when you start moving all this soil around. A few of the things that I found in the files was a letter written in 2004 to the Board of Health and the Board of Selectmen that had a history of contamination at the foundry, found from 1989 to 1994. Mr. Lincoln's attorney wants me to accept the fact that regulatory closure pretty much seals the deal on all of that history of contamination. But in 2013, an LSP, Nova Armstrong, was hired to do an MCP status review, and she says, quote unquote, according RTN 4996 achieved regulatory closure in 1993 following risk characterization. However, there is no documentation indicating any type of remedial response actions. I would ask you to show me, after you looking at the pile of documents that I've looked at and trying to find it on the DEP website, where and when was the remediation of this property conducted? There is a long history of PCBs, TPH, benzofluoranthene, toluene, and TPH. This is an old industrial site with a bunch of crap buried in it, and no real proof that it's ever been fully remediated, other than you're taking the word of someone saying there was one hot spot. This is a place that was a dump. It was a dump. It was an industrial site where they made iron castings. that was been in business for long before DEP stepped in and started protecting us against a lot of the stuff that was dumped. And now suddenly it's clean. It's clean. It's all clean. Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's buried under, I don't even know how many feet of soil now. So I don't know how you'd ever even find out what's under there at this point. I watched them just bury it. It's buried. Piles and piles of soil. So I'm here to basically tell you, I didn't know anything that about what Carol talked about tonight. You know, the fact that you guys are being defensive about her bringing this stuff up blows my mind. It blows my mind. You're supposed to be protecting us, the people who live in this area. So her bringing up the fact that she's found stuff or discovered stuff or has questions, I think it's great. It's refreshing. It's a breath of fresh air. There was an asbestos abatement done, but they didn't excavate anything. And if you read through some of these files, you'll see that all they did was demolish the buildings. And the people who were involved in the demolishing and the excavation, several of them are involved in, they've been indicted. They've been closed. They're out of business. So do your homework. Do your homework on this property. Don't just take for, I mean, I have nothing against people developing things. I know that, you know, this happens all the time. Brownfield sites are developed. But do your homework. Don't blow off people that try to ask questions, that have concerns. And bring in an outside person. You said that that's not done normally. That's bull. Carpaccio was brought in as an outside consultant to review everything that was done at the shovel shops. There were recommendations made. Nothing's ever been done, but there you have it. So you can bring in somebody who's outside, independent, not an arm of the company that's actually developing the property, and assess this whole situation. Do a desk review of everything back to 1970s, and then come back and tell me, tell all of us that it's fine, that it's okay to disturb all the soil over there and watch the water flow southward from that property, that it's okay. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
You already addressed the comment from Dale, who spoke for the Furnace Village business.
Okay. Great. So I think we addressed Dale Caresters. He's in support of the trail connectivity issue. He's in the abutting area on South Street. Any other public comment for 560 Foundry Street? Okay, so seeing none, I am going to take Mr. Toohill, Mr. Lincoln. Do you have any other comments, any other information you need from us? Otherwise, we'll make a motion to continue to June 7th.
No, just, Mike, when you get a chance, we should talk about connectivity of some of the trails from on-site to off-site, and make sure I understand where the trail network is that you're connecting to. Because we had some proposals earlier, and I don't know whether resurrecting those answers the questions or if we need to think of a couple other different options.
Let's start fresh. I think that would be the best plan. It would be great to talk because I also too, when you spoke about the trails in that back forest, I cannot find them. Okay. So I would definitely like to, yeah, let's have a conversation. That's fine.
Okay. And should we, Mr. Chairman, should we do that through Andrea?
Yeah, I mean, you can just arrange with Andrea, just so she knows what when you're talking and everything else.
Okay.
She can put you together.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do appreciate the time tonight and the information, and despite some of the commentary, I do respect the issues that have been raised, and I appreciate that the applicant has been asked to provide some responses to some information. I believe that much of uh, um, much of the information is necessary for us to review, and I don't disagree with that. That's why we're here. That's why we actually refiled this hearing, so we could actually have a full commission to review it. So, anything to the contrary, I think is not necessarily accurate. So we're here to evaluate this project and make sure that it meets our guidelines and is permittable. So whether or not it is permittable or not. So I do appreciate it. So I'm going to make a motion to continue 560 Foundry to our next meeting is June 7th.
Blondine, second.
Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Carol, I.
Blondine, aye.
Katie, aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
So we have a series of certificates of compliance here to go through, and then we do have some business to do as well. So hopefully we can get this done in the next half an hour and not exceed 4 hours, which would be.
If, I do see that, I think we can, the certificates, there's 4 certificates of compliance, that are like each other. And there is Barron Estates. Do you want to take a 5-minute break to stretch, or are you?
No.
I will allow someone else to propose that. I'm good, but if we need a 5-minute break, I would, if someone wants to make a motion for a 5-minute recess, then I would entertain that, but.
10:06. I'll take notes for the next 5 minutes if anybody wants to stay on.
No, I didn't make the motion, so do you need a break?
No.
I need a break, Mr. Chairman. If you give me 3 minutes, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, make a motion to recess for 5 minutes
Thank you.
till 10:07.
Blondine, second.
Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Blondine, aye.
Spady, aye.
Carol, I.
Okay, we'll see you at 10:07. Can you just put your phones on mute and turn your video off? Thanks. Okay, being 10:07, bring the meeting back to order. Did we lose Carol?
Appears that we did.
Okay, please note that at 10:07, we came back from recess. Carol Mundine was not with us. Okay, so COCs. I have all the plans if anybody needs to see them. Just let me know.
Okay, let's do 4 COCs all at once. We'll start, they're all like each other. You can, and we have 4 septic repairs that need certificates of compliance. They're all done by the Collins Engineering. And we will start with Summer Street. Summer Street was in substantial compliance. All the permanent markers were in place, and it is
So the only thing different here is that they did install that straw wattle. It was there on Sunday.
yeah, it was there like the next day.
Okay.
So you read these reports and you remember what they say. So in this particular case, they're all going to be, they've all become compliant. In this particular case, the perpetual condition is 35, no dumping in the wetlands. I recommend substantial compliance.
Any questions from the commission? Any public comment to Summer Street? Seeing none, make a motion to issue a certificate of compliance for 2 Summer Street, noting special condition number 32, no dumping in the wetlands is a perpetual condition.
And
did I miss something? Okay.
you missed Ben Carroll seconding it.
I see.
Did I miss it?
Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Carol, I.
Spady, aye.
42 Western Ave, certificate of compliance.
Okay, 42 Western Ave is in a different place, and it otherwise like it. In this particular case, when I wrote the special, when I wrote the staff report, they had the permanent markers in the wrong place. So the professional engineer went back, picked up the markers, put them in the right place, and gave us a revised plan that says they were there on this particular date. And that's the way he'll do it from now on. So special condition, perpetual, number 35, no dumping in the wetlands.
Any questions from the commission? Any public comment? Oh, go ahead.
I just want to note that Carol's back, that's all.
Okay, thank you. So Carol has returned at 10:10. Any commission comment on 42 Western Ave? Any public comment on 42 Western Ave? Seeing none, make a motion to issue a certificate of compliance to 42 Western Ave, noting special condition number 35, no dumping in the wetlands is a perpetual condition.
Lundin, second.
Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Carol, I.
Lundin, aye.
Spady, aye.
29 Shady Rest Road, certificate of compliance.
Again, at the time I wrote this, the permanent markers were misplaced. The dumping in the wetlands, the dumping behind the pool fence was extraordinary. And the professional engineer went out, relocated the permanent markers, made the note on the revised plan, and had the loosest material on the landscape pile removed. So the condition for no dumping in the wetlands, clearly being met here, is number 35.
Any comments from the commission? Any public comment for 40? Did you have something, Carol?
Yeah, you said the loosest stuff was removed? What does that mean?
It means that the pile's been there a long time and a lot of it's composted.
Any public comment for 29 Shady Rest? Seeing none, make a motion, issue a certificate of compliance to 29 Shady Rest, noting special condition number 35, no dumping in the wetlands of perpetual condition.
83 Short Street.
Hang on, we got to vote yet.
Move quick.
We need Spadia was a second.
We need a second.
Yeah, Spadia was a second. And roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Carol, I.
Blondine, aye.
ADI. All right, Andrew, go.
83 Short Street, certificate of compliance, go.
Same thing. The permanent markers have been relocated. We've got a draft to where they were supposed to be all along. We got a revised plan that says he did it, and the special condition, no dumping in the wetlands, is number 33.
Just as a note, I actually inspected all 4 of these sites yesterday at around 11:30 a.m. So as of 11:30 a.m., all these permanent markers were in the right place. So,
4 days. Right place.
well, I'm just telling you, as of about 24 hours ago, they were there. So, okay. So, any comments? Any public comment for 83 Short Street? Seeing none, make a motion to certificate of compliance for 83 Short, noting special condition number 33, no dumping in the wetlands to perpetual condition. Any second? Speedy is second. Caulfield, roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Carol, I.
Blondine, aye.
ADI.
Okay, 71 Mill Street, partial certificate of compliance.
This Garrett Tunnison is here.
Wow.
Rejoining.
Somebody better wake him up.
Yeah. No. So I'm going to start. This is Barron Estates, the 26 lot subdivision out on Mill Street, and the partial certificate of compliance was written mostly to speak of the entryway, because the landscaping there is actually had a monitoring report and is in good shape. But the description in the partial certificate of compliance speaks to all the other work that has been completed. The buffer zone restoration at the entrance, the base pavement, the installation of the stormwater management system, the landscape plantings, the paved walkways, the grass areas, the erosion controls, the preliminary site plan, and the salamander crossings. And the conservation restriction and the work that hasn't been completed is finishing the remaining house lots, final stabilization of the soils, and final as-built plans. My concern here is that we don't have an engineer certificate. We do have perpetual conditions, but we don't have an engineer certificate, and the preliminary as-built plans were progress prints. They weren't stamped. So there's really no engineer saying the work is in substantial compliance without the stamps. Unless Garrett is alive and wants to say something.
Yes, I'm here. Good evening. I spoke with Mike O'Shaughnessy this evening. He mentioned that Luke, the PLS, I believe, signed the statement saying that he stamped the plans. He didn't actually provide the statement. That's correct. That was as much as they could do. I guess there are some of the inverts that they need to get in some of the stormwater systems. They couldn't get due to the way the erosion controls were placed around some of the basins and the silt sacks are in. So that was the only reason why that they didn't give the certifying statement, because they'd have to take out the stormwater, basically the sediment controls. They didn't want to do that.
Sure, they could. You know what? I was looking at a hard copy set of plans, which were progress prints. I'm quickly going online to see if the site plans that are not attached. Oh, they're in your letter, right?
The site plans that I provided were in my letter. I do know that, Luke from, Clem Survey, did, sign and stamp the plan. So I don't know which one that is, and if he uploaded it, I didn't know if he spoke to anybody, meaning you, Andrea, or,
I'm looking at the plans in
didn't know.
your set and their progress prints. And I'm looking at the plans, hard copy plans I have and their progress prints.
Okay. Is it signed and stamped by Luke, possibly?
No, there's no stamp, it's progress print.
Okay,
The stamp says progress print.
okay.
There's no professional engineer stamp. And we could certainly do the partial on the entrance because that's landscape work and it's fully within Garrett's professional capabilities to say it's substantial compliance. I'd probably recommend giving the engineer a chance to sign an affidavit that says the work that has been done versus the work that hasn't been done. You can get a lot more for that $100 if you wait 2 weeks. I'd like to release all the lots that are out of our jurisdiction by doing this. What do you want to do, Garrett?
I agree with you, Andrew.
Okay, so, motion to continue to June 7th.
Speedy, second.
Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Carol, I.
Monday night.
Speedy, aye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Garrett.
Have a good evening, everyone. Thanks.
Okay, so, next up is, meeting minutes. We can make this relatively quickly. The executive session minutes from November 16th, I had no issues. Did anybody have any comments? Since this particular issue is still something that could have an impact on something, I vote to approve the minutes but not release them. So that when we go to release them, they'll all be approved already. Okay. Any discussion about that?
Just, can I vote on these minutes?
You can abstain if you want. You can vote as well. There's nothing to preclude you from doing that, but some members abstain if they weren't at the meeting.
I think I'll abstain.
Make a motion to accept the executive session minutes for 9/16/2020, noting that we are not releasing them.
Lundin, second.
Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Monday night.
Speedy, aye.
And Carol abstains. Ben Carroll abstains. The March 15 minutes, I would like to make just one change on page 3. It's noted as Lundin made a motion to adjourn for a 5-minute recess. I think it's properly, it's a motion to recess for 5 minutes. So if you adjourn, you're adjourning. So it's just so I'd just like to correct that. She made a motion to recess for 5 minutes at 7:50 p.m.
Good catch.
So make a motion to, any other comments for March 15th? Make a motion to accept the meeting minutes for March 15th with the change noted on page 3 to change motion to adjourn to motion to recess.
Beatty, second.
Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye,
Lundin, aye.
Beatty, aye.
and Carol abstains. Meeting minutes for March 22nd, I have no comments. Make a motion to accept the minutes for March 22nd, 2021 as written.
Lundin, aye.
Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye,
Lundin, aye.
Beatty, aye.
and Carol abstains. Okay, next up is an update on the 80 Short Street.
Is, there's a attendee, Gerald Beals. Can you identify why, if you're here for anything in particular? And Jonathan Chase is, our associate member. He was here for the pollinator garden. And the Easton, the Eagle Scout is not. I had sent the Eagle Scout a message that I thought we needed to address two issues. One was about irrigation and with the location. And the other one was about where to put the bench when you allow goldenrod to grow up to people's waists. And so he perhaps thought he needed to address those issues in more specificity. Jonathan, do you want to? Do you want to add anything to that? Joe wants. Yeah.
Jonathan, you're a panelist now, so you can take yourself off mute and turn on your video if you want.
And now what do I do? Start video?
Yep.
This is a lot more work than I've done in a while here.
Nice. There you are.
Like that glow? Must be the
That's
lamp.
beautiful.
Last I spoke to him via text was on Wednesday, and I haven't heard back from him. So I have no idea. He is 17, so we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, the only reason it's on the agenda is because his scoutmaster said that May 24th meant a lot. So here we are, meaning a lot.
Okay.
See you on the 7th?
I guess we should probably both contact him and tell him to get it done.
So the issue is it's 300 feet away, so it's 3 lengths of hose.
Right.
Unless you can come up with a better answer. There's a community at the community garden. We have a faucet. So
yeah.
let's let him figure that out.
Right.
Okay.
Right. But I haven't heard anything from him or Rick Rhodes, the scoutmaster. So at least it was entertaining tonight.
Good to have you here, Jonathan.
And you're going to respond to the invasive species monitoring request.
Yes, I just figured out my calendar today, so that's good.
This is what happens. You grow up, you become an associate member, and I call you for volunteering.
Lots of stuff.
I get to be an associate member if I volunteer? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I volunteered already. I already answered her and everything.
Mike's been way volunteering on Tufts Farm as helping out with the RFR. We had the open house on Wednesday, and we did have one party attend. And we do have a comprehensive permit for Blackledge. It's going to be an affordable housing project over on Union Street. The ANRAD is coming in on June 7th. It's got some wetlands. They want to verify the wetland locations before they do the review. The wetland impacts, I've already seen the review, are nothing like other projects you've seen tonight.
Yeah, that's what it looked like.
Mike Spadilla is also going to be Zooming with me on Friday of Memorial Day weekend to talk about a Boston University deer management study. inside your binder, you're wondering what that little flyer is at the end. It's the BU Deer Management Study. They can't wait to talk to Mike because he knows everything about deer.
Like deer.
And including having wildlife cameras that with data that they can use.
Tons of it.
So all good.
I'm down.
The governor is declared that the state of emergency is getting lifted June 15th. Two things that will affect our lives most intimately are being addressed in the legislature right now. Will remote meetings be allowed after the after June 15th? And the answer is not under current law. You'll have to go back to open meeting, and meeting in person and signing hard copy documents. Delegation was the way we wrote the delegation. Andrew gets to sign everything as long as you make the motion. Is also tied to the state of emergency. So if you want me to be delegated for the last meeting of my career in Easton, would have to rewrite and re-record the delegation signature. So think about that for the 7th. I'll be talking to town council. Town council can do whatever you want in terms of preparing documents. I understand some boards are really looking forward to getting together and passing paper that they can all sign.
In the nice hot town hall.
Sounds exciting.
For the summer.
With the window open, with all the windows open.
The air conditioner.
So those are the big things going on in conservation land.
Just 80 Short Street. Just to update, I think we sort of skipped over that. So he was supposed to come in with an NOI, and he has hired an engineering firm to work with him on that NOI, and he expects it to submit it in July. So I think he's on his way to doing the right thing here. So we will hold him to his July submission and go from there. The one other thing is, and I noticed it, and I meant to ask about it at our last meeting that we didn't have a quorum on, and is that the 107 South Street NOI for the spill. But I did see that they filed, and I saw the notice, so that's going to be coming up shortly. So, and I think that's about it.
The key to 107 South Street, home heating oil spill at the end. They had to excavate at the end of the sump pump, and the contaminated soil created a tributary to the watercourse. So I had them create a moat so that it wasn't a direct connection, but for them to fill it back in and revegetate will be on the landowner, because insurance only picks up what's required by 21E, not what's required by the Conservation Commission. So at the moment, it's a moat.
No.
And it is, and the booms are still in place, but the booms aren't catching anything really anymore. So I just wanted you to think about that. That's it for me.
I have one other thing, if I may. Is that okay, Rory?
Yep.
The Eagle Scout project at Wheaton Farm, thinking about it in the last couple of minutes. I don't know him. I've met him on Zoom. Jonathan, you probably know him better. I just want to throw out a thought, which is that perhaps he would be more interested in destruction than construction. If it's possible that it might suit him to do an invasive plant management, say at a place like Militia Park, where he could take out honeysuckles that attract ticks. He could take out buckthorns. He could get help with it, make it a community project. Just a thought in case, whatever reasons he has for not appearing tonight,
Right.
an alternative might help.
Is it fairly extensive?
Not if you have a team of people helping you. It's mostly the island between the parking area and the ball fields.
Yep. Okay. Well, I'll see what's up with him and put that out.
Thank you.
Before we dismiss, I just want to send out, good thoughts to Charlie. And hopefully we see him again very soon. So I did want to say that. So. Okay. And I think motion to adjourn.
Lundin second.
Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
ROI.
Lundin, aye.
ADI.
Thank you all. Appreciate your patience tonight.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Good night. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.